Your dream is not in vain, for when do you find a rainbow? Only after rain.
Message is being broadcast by the Department of Defense of the Republic. At 2 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, multiple unidentified objects were confirmed to have entered Earth's atmosphere.
Discovery Houston, 20 seconds to LOS T-Drift.
Contact, cleared orbit. The first message that comes to you is you are a divine being. You matter. You count. You come from the realms of unimaginable power and light, and you will return to those realms.
The vast stretches of the unknown and the unanswered and the unfinished still far outstrip our collective comprehension.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Broadcasting from Forest Tower Studios, all the way from the Deep South. Now, here is your host, Joe Root.
Broadcasting from a shack on a hill in the mossy, scary, freaky creek bottoms of Cane Creek, Arkansas. This is Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Root. Thank you so much for joining us tonight on the broadcast. We are live on the Fringe FM. Thursday night is the night. That's the date, the 18th on into the 19th. Tonight, author Rob Shelsky joins us. That's right. It's time to talk aliens, UFOs, Mandela effect, time travel. This guy's written so many books that we can get into anywhere we want to go. It's very cool. So I'm pretty sure you're going to enjoy this. All right, so this show also, got to let you know, that was brought to you by Get the Tea at GetTheTea.com. The webinar is the 29th. I'm going to say it until all of you show up. I'm just going to keep saying it. The 29th, 5 p.m. Pacific. The 29th, make sure you're there. Come hang out with us. Also brought to you by AncientLifeOil.com, the best CBD oil on the planet, and PrepareWithTheFringe.com. Take advantage of the sale that's going on right now at GetTheTea.com. On the front page, you can get one bag for free, get 3, buy one, and get one for free. It's kind of like the fireworks stands, right? Buy 3, get one for free. And plus, you get a bottle of something else. You're going to have to go check it out yourself, because every day, it seems like every day, man, Ronnie is just throwing out new deals for you guys. Also, thank you to the supporters. Today, we sold like almost, I think, 5 or 6 shirts today, and I got to give Dre the credit for that, because she was brave enough. You know, when people buy swag from the store, I tell them, I say, look, send me the picture so I can show everybody. And most people are kind of afraid. They don't want to show their picture. They're afraid what they look like. And most of you guys are good looking people, right? I mean, you are. Let's just face it. Good looking people hang out together. That's the way it is. And so I showed the picture, and sure enough, I woke up today. I was going to say this morning, but I don't wake up in the morning like most folks do, since I'm a night owl, and I had like 3 t-shirt sales right off the bat. And I know why. It's because we put that picture up. So if you can, please, send your picture when you get that stuff. Go check it out. It's at the shop at lightingthevoid.com. Also, if you've got a UFO sighting you'd like to report and you live out on the west side, give UFO Seekers a call, 661-UFO-7889. I gave Tim Doyle a call today. He's in good spirits. And we had a talk about the Area 51, so-called Area 51 raid. And yeah, he's doing real good. Also, go to the YouTube channel, youtube.com/UFO Seekers, backed and supported by the Fringe FM. And tomorrow night's going to be open lines, and we're going to bring on the Long Beach All-Star, who's super skeptic. Alex Exum is going to be on the show tomorrow night with us. Can't wait for that one. That's going to be pretty interesting, too. I'm pretty sure it's going to be. So tonight, we're going to speak to a fabulous writer, Rob Shelsky. and he is an avid and eclectic writer of both fiction and nonfiction, and averages about 4,000 words a day. Rob has a degree in science, and he's written a large number of factual articles for the former AlienSkin Magazine, as well as for other magazines such as Doorways, Midnight Street in the UK, the Internet Review of Science Fiction, and many others. Now, while at AlienSkin Magazine, a resident columnist there for 7 years, Rob did a number of investigative articles, including some concerning the paranormal, as well as columns about UFOs, including interviews of those who have had encounters with them. His nonfiction books on UFOs include For the Moon is Hollow and Aliens Rule the Sky, Deadly UFOs and the Disappeared, Ancient Alien Empire Megalithia, The Darker Side of the Moon, They Are Watching Us, Invader Moon, and more. He's also written books on time travel, including Time Travel Invasion, as well as Mysteries of Time Travel, 35 Cases of Time Travel Intrusion. And he also writes science fiction, which is really cool, horror, paranormal, and paranormal romance even, as well as historical romance books. And he has often and over a long period explored the alien and UFO question and has made investigative trips to research UFO hotspot areas such as Pine Bush, New York, Gulf Breeze, Florida, and other regions, including Brown Mountain, North Carolina, known for the infamous Brown Mountain Lights, as well as investigating numerous places known for paranormal activity. You can go to the website. It's robshelsky.blogspot.com. Also, just go to Rob Shelsky on Amazon and you'll see all the books. Thank you so much for coming on Lighting the Void. Can't wait to get into this one. I really appreciate it, Rob.
Well, good evening, and thanks for having me aboard. And boy, that was quite some biography you gave there.
Yeah, that biography goes on and on and on. I had to stop. And the reason why is when you write all these books, man, and you do what you've done, it's hard for us as hosts because we don't want to stop because we feel like, man, we might leave out something important because you've done all this stuff where it's like me, I sit at home and run my mouth and look at the internet, so you've had quite a different life than I had.
Yeah, it's been a unique one, all right, for about the last 15 years. I'll give it that much. You get into some strange situations, and some of them are fun, and some not so fun, and some are a little scary.
Did you start out writing nonfiction first, or was it just a mix of all of it?
The very first thing I did was a short story, and then that was followed by being made a columnist, investigative columnist for AlienSkin Magazine for 7 years or so, and that was I actually had to go to places and investigate things and then report on it in articles for the magazine, and it was pretty interesting. But that's what really got me going into the research thing.
Right. Well, okay. I'm glad you're here because I can go anywhere with this because you've written about a lot of things. I haven't talked about time travel, and I want to start there with you because I have such a hard time with it, right? Because there's so much stuff to be skeptical about when it comes to time travel. Although I'm sure there are, the fundamental idea of time travel and how it works and the probabilities of time travelers actually being here. Because if you just think about it, why wouldn't they? Probability would say that they are traveling. But the evidence, I'm not so sure about. Are you sure about this time travel thing? I haven't read your book, I'm going to be honest. So, tell me what you think about it.
Well, I think time travel is real, and I think it's already taken place. The thing about time travel is that it is theoretically possible. Einstein himself said it was, and he's not the only one. The mathematics of physics do allow for time travel. They say that it's unlikely that anyone could do it because at present it would seem to be impossible given what we would need, wormholes with negative energy and all that sort of thing. But there was an engineer in 1947 who said it was impossible to go into space because once the rocket was in space, there would be nothing for it to push against, ignoring the second law of Newton's laws of momentum, which says that for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So this goes on and things change. But yeah, if time travel has ever occurred throughout the history of the universe, then that means that it has occurred throughout time already, because no matter when they invent a time machine, they can go anywhere in time with it. So it doesn't matter if they invented 1 trillion years from now or 1 trillion years ago, they can come to our now with it. So yeah, I think it's been done, and I think there's plenty of evidence to support it.
Like what types of evidence that we have that we can go check out?
I love that lag there. That like what evidence?
Well, I'm thinking. I'd love to check it out. Well, look, I'm going to be honest with you. When you say evidence, I think of things like these guys that get on YouTube and blur out their faces that are taking lie detector tests saying they're time travelers. Although I know that's not real evidence, but I'm just wondering what else can we really look at for evidence? And maybe you know something I don't.
Well, yes, you have to be really careful with that stuff on YouTube. In fact, they just found out that one of them, Noah, who was on one channel, turned out to be a hoax. He himself admitted it. He's like 16 years old. And I was asked on another radio show about that. Well, what do you think about that? And I said, I don't think he's a real time traveler. Why not? I said, well, they're always blurring it. They're filming him in a basement, and he looks like a kid in a hoodie, even though they blur his face. And when he talks about some of his projections about the future already are wrong. So, and I said, if you check with most of these, like the original John Titor, who supposedly was a time traveler on the internet years ago, same thing. It was a hoax. So you have to be very careful. You have to dissect it, and you have to go into it with a lot of skepticism. But yeah, there is evidence for it. First of all, we know that theoretically it is possible, according to Einstein. I mean, if you want to argue with him, you can. But people like Stephen Hawking, and I'm quoting him, he says, even if it turns out that time travel is impossible, it is important that we understand why it is impossible, which is a pretty good quote. But I think it is possible, and I think it has shown itself. We have it in the form of anecdotal evidence by hundreds of people, if not thousands, of events that have happened to them personally, odd cases that come from around the world and date way back to even a few centuries ago. We have physical evidence of OOP objects being dug up in various places around the world, and these have been dug up for several centuries now as well, as far back as the 1700s at least. And these things are being found where they're not supposed to be. And some people say, oh, well, they're hoaxes. There's thousands upon thousands of them. It'd almost be impossible to hoax some of them, and I could go into more detail about some of it. But these objects being found are just all over the place, and they're all sorts of things, and they're locked inside of coal. They're found in seams of coal 25 feet down in the ground or more. People have had it fall out of a lump of coal that they're going to burn in their fireplace. Everything from, you name it, ladles, handbells, spoons, nails, hammers, all sorts of stuff has been found. And over and over and over again, polished cubes of aluminum where they shouldn't be, tracks of in Turkey and Malta that they thought originally were cart tracks, but are far, far too old to be cart tracks, probably well before there were even horses domesticated to pull the carts. And not only that, but these cart tracks are the width of an automobile, and they don't have the side groove in the rock that where a hub would have been dragging against the mud or the sand or whatever they were going through at the time. No grooves for hubs, not a cart, but some other kind of vehicle whose base was approximately similar to our vehicles of today. So this goes on and on and on. There is a lot of evidence for this. And then, of course, you have other people who claim that they've actually time traveled in government projects, like on the Pegasus project and others. Now, any one of these things by itself isn't enough evidence for me, but especially witness evidence, because witnesses can lie, they can get things wrong. But if you get hundreds of witnesses throughout history talking about strange events that have occurred to them, and there's been more than one person involved in it at that time, then you have to consider it as being more reliable than just one single person's testimony. And with all this OOP stuff we're finding, it's pretty amazing. And by the way, the Mandela effect may well be a side effect of time travel too, in which case it would form another basis for evidence.
What do you think about that, though? The fact that scientists at CERN, they're kind of doing whatever. I mean, we get time and time again, we get articles that kind of give us updates about what's going on over there. But the fact that they're talking about sending particles that travel faster than the speed of light, and I forget the name of the particle. I think there's only one, a tachyon or something like that. And if you look into
the whole list of particles, it's the idea that for every normal particle that we have, there is also a tachyon version which can't go below the speed of light, and none of our existing subatomic particles can go faster than the speed of light. So tachyons are like the reverse image, not antimatter, but the reverse image of our current subatomic particles, but they can't go slower than the speed of light, so they supposedly can time travel.
Do you think that, does that worry you at all, though? And I'm not talking from a conspiratorial level. It worries me just a little bit that we've got super smart people, and I take no offense to people being smart. I love smart people, but how smart are we really? Like, maybe we're just figuring this stuff out. And I wonder sometimes, is it safe to start trying to rip holes in times and dimensions and, smashing particles together? What's your opinion on that?
And we seem to be oblivious to the consequences. For instance, CERN is smashing particles together, and yes, that can have some causal implications there, repercussions as a result, but they're not doing anything that the universe hasn't been doing all along. We are smashing subatomic particles together, but suns and black holes and quasars and hypernovas and supernovas and even regular novas do the same thing all the time, and the universe doesn't suddenly come to an end or switch timelines. At least I don't think it does. But when you get into quantum computing, this is entirely new. And one of the founders of D-Wave computing himself said, one of the two founders said, that we are accessing parallel timelines, and we are taking advantage of the quantum computers in those timelines to solve these problems more quickly on our own quantum computers, that they actually reach across timelines and utilize a whole bank of quantum computers, and that's why we get the answers so quickly. This is him saying that, not me. So when you're doing that, if that's exactly what is happening when we do quantum computing, and we're already doing some of it, there could very well be repercussions we're not aware of. And one of them might be merging of timelines or altering timelines.
Right.
Some of this stuff you got to be careful with.
Yeah, I mean, that's the theory, right? That this stuff could be causing the Mandela effect. I've heard it before on several occasions that that's the theory. That because they're over there playing around with this big toy, that they're causing ripples and kind of glitches in our timelines.
Right. I mean, if there's a quantum computer using a parallel universe quantum computer, that means the two of us are merging at that point, at least between those two computers. Does it cause ripples or waves outwards that alters our timeline? And by the way, we seem to have a lot of physical evidence for that too, and I'm talking fairly convincing evidence at that. Again, you can point to any one thing and say, oh, no, this is that or that's that, but you can do that with anything. People doing about us having landed on the moon, they do it about the Earth being flat. For every scientific fact, there seems to be a conspiracy theory, some of which may be true, I'm not sure, but, I mean, they can't all be wrong. But so you do have to kind of consider. What I do is I take evidence from different sources, and I merge it together to see if there's enough of overall evidence to support the idea. And then I just write about it, and I tell people about it, and then I leave it to them to try to decide for themselves. Is time travel an absolute? Is it a done deal? I don't know. For me personally, the evidence is in, and I think, yes, it has been done. For others, they may not think so.
Yeah, the probability alone, like I mentioned earlier, to me would state that the way technology is moving and quantum computing and physics and all of these things, I think somewhere in the near future, I don't think it's too far off for us if it doesn't already exist, that, it's going to be a real thing. And if it is a real thing, then that means there's already jumpers. But what I'm wondering about is, can these jumpers go both, and this is just pure speculation, in the past and in the future? Because what I've heard, and I wish I could explain this to you, but I can't, I'm not smart enough. But what I heard is it's very easy to go into the past, but to go into the future is impossible. And I wish I had a way to explain that. But have you heard anything like that? Any of these scientists or physicians or physicists tell you that?
Yes, as a matter of fact, I have. But most of them tend to say just the opposite, that you can go into the future, and we've already kind of done it to a certain degree, but you can't go into the past is what they're arguing. However, And the reason they say that is because if you get into a spaceship, and we've proven it with atomic clocks placed on Earth and in our satellites, that if you're in space, because you're moving faster and out of Earth's gravity well, that time for you slows down because you're moving faster. Meanwhile, time is proceeding at its normal rate on Earth, so that our clocks become out of sync. So the person on board that spaceship is slowly moving forward in time compared to us on Earth. They're gone for like 50 years near the speed of light, and they come back. They've only aged a few years, while 50 years has gone by on Earth. So, excuse me. So moving forward in time seems to be something we can do. Einstein believes that all of time exists already. And so he personally didn't like the idea of time travel, but again, he himself says that theoretically, according to the mathematics involved, it is possible. Going back in time, most quantum physicists now think that if you go back in time and make any change, like even breathing the air, you immediately cause a branching in the timeline. So you could go back and kill your own grandfather because you've created a new timeline where you weren't born. Meanwhile, the old timeline exists, so if you went back to the future, you'd be back in your own timeline where your grandfather lived. A bit hard to follow maybe, but it means that any time you go into the past, say you go back to the time of the Roman Empire and you have a few machine guns and you take over and become Caesar, well, you've created a new timeline where the whole world's going to be different from that point forward. But the old original timeline that you're from is still there, if you can follow that.
Yeah, no, I got you. So, yeah, that makes sense. And you know what? I probably had it backwards, actually, from what I heard. So
it depends on what physicists you listen to.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So you wrote the book Shattered Reality, the Mandela Effect. What is your biggest evidence in your mind that the Mandela Effect is in fact a real thing? What's the one thing that sells you the most?
Oh, wow. That's tough. I have some personal memories that seem to have altered over time, along with hundreds of thousands of others. But memories just aren't that reliable. I mean, I would swear if someone pointed a gun at my head that some of this stuff is true, but memories can be faulty. But right. I think the evidence I find is actual photographs, actual depictions of maps and globes. And I found one of those myself. In various movies and TV shows over the last, say, 40, 50 years, they'll often have globes in the background and or maps. And if you look at these globes, the land masses are appearing and disappearing on them. It shows land masses that never existed. And in other cases, it shows land masses that are smaller or in different positions. A good example is the TV show Friends. There's a globe in the background of Season 2, the episode about the bracelet buddies. In the background is a globe. If you freeze frame it and zero in on it, it shows an island to the southwest of Australia. There is no island to the southwest of Australia. I lived in Australia as a kid. I was taught in Australian school. The only island of any consequence south of Australia is Tasmania, which is the southeast side of Australia. And on this globe, it shows that Tasmania as well as this other island. If you go into Dazed and Confused, a movie done in the 90s, it shows a landmass. These two kids are spinning a globe. They're in a classroom, cheaply made movie, filmed on location, a real school globe. They're spinning this globe while they're talking, and you can clearly see a landmass to the west of Australia, a large one, about one-fifth the size of Australia. It doesn't exist. I found one in an old I Dream of Jeannie series. There's an episode where they have a globe stuck on a guy's head, and there's land masses on this globe that don't exist. Now, all these shows are filmed at different times by different producers, different actors and actresses, different prop people. So are they deliberately faking globes, or are they just doing what anyone would do and going and getting a standard globe and using it as background for their show? And as much as I've tried, I cannot find any evidence that special globes were made for any of these TV shows or movies.
You know, when I heard about it at first, I was like, this is just something that the community's coming up with on their own. It's another one of these things. But when I really started digging into it, it did kind of freak me out. The Berenstein Bears, C-3PO's leg, what was the other one? Shazam. The fact that the guy, and I don't know how that ended up, but the guy, what's his name? Sinbad was just totally denying that he was ever in that movie, and yet people were showing copies of it. And there's lists and lists of stuff that just don't make sense to people. And you got to think, okay, man, one or two things could be memory. It could be we're playing tricks with our own minds. But once it gets to a big enough list, I think there's something to it, you know?
Well, yeah, and I think sometimes things can be misprinted or misquoted. But we also have, I mean, one of the ones that really bugs me is Snow White. I clearly remember seeing that as a kid, and it was mirror, mirror on the wall, who's the fairest of us all. And it's not that way anymore. Now it's magic mirror on the wall. And it's like, no. I remember quite clearly.
You're talking about the Disney Snow White. It says mirror, mirror, right?
Mirror, mirror on the wall.
So
now,
that's changed too.
Yeah, that's changed too. And Silence of the Lambs, where he says, hello, Clarice, except he never did say that. In Wizard of Oz, in the movie, the Scarecrow waves around a .357 Magnum pistol. Now, I remember seeing that movie as a kid. I don't remember the Scarecrow having any sort of pistol. And where would he get a .357 Magnum from in Oz? It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
I don't remember that.
Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, it's a beautiful day in the neighborhood.
Yeah.
No, now it's a beautiful day in this neighborhood. And yet, when I was a kid, I watched that show, and I used to hum along and sing the song. You know, I was kind of a nerd, but
no, I watched it too. I did. He said, "Oh God, see, you're starting to freak me out." Talking about the subject freaks me out because look, well, we're up against a break, but the fact that something like this makes you feel kind of out of control, right? Or that there's something going on that's far out of our control that we're going to end up a victim to because it's just a little wild. You know what I mean? That's the way I feel when I think about this kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And after the break, maybe we ought to discuss that a little bit, like with these disappearing islands and what happens to all the people on them.
Oh, yeah, sure. Disappearing islands, that's a good one. Yeah, we'll be right back with Rob Shelsky. You guys don't go anywhere.
Hola, Fringe listeners. This is Dave Cruz of Beyond the Strange, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Hi, this is Kronox from Belgium, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
Listen, I want to tell you about G.I. Joy from GetTheTea.com. It's the best alchemical concoction of goodies for your stomach and digestive system I can recommend, and that's all based on my experience. Packed with colostrum, acidophilus, aloe, peppermint, and turmeric. If you do your own research, then you know this is the bee's knees for the stomach and digestion. Now, due to Big Brother's ears and the eye in the sky, you know I can't go into the details about what it helped me with. All I can say is I got relief. It's non-GMO, no fillers, no preservatives, manufactured right here in the US of A, and delivered to you by the only people who stay on top of the game and are out in front. Go grab a bottle of G.I. Joy at GetTheTea.com and see what all the fuss is about. Again, that's GetTheTea.com.
Alright everyone, this is Justin from the UK. Excuse the chitty. If you're into the Fringe and you want to hear the brass tacks, me old china plate, Joe Roop and his guests on Light in the Void will open your mince pies. You need to shut your north and south and use your 10-speed gears and listen to them bubble. You could hear a Barry Crocker, no Brussels, but he ain't no holy friar. Anyway, you beat a Barnaby Rudge and take a butcher's.
So, have you heard of heavy metals? I'm not talking about the heavy metals in the junkyard. I'm talking about the heavy metals that build up in your body. Heavy metals in your body can make you feel sluggish, fatigued, and just plain off. Why not try Life Change Tea at GetTheTea.com? Cleansing your body and making you feel great. No, not cleansing the outside of your body, but cleansing the inside of your body of intruders that sneak their way into you and set up an intruder camp. Life Change Tea helps remove unwanted intruder camps. Brew it, steep it, and drink in the results. Tastes great so you can create a new health habit. Our tea loves to help people. It just needs the chance. So order yours today by logging on to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com. Our Life Change Super Strength Tea is waiting. This could be a beautiful relationship. Take charge of your health. Order at getthetea.com. That's getthetea.com.
This is Corbin, son of the one and only Joe Roop, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
Alex X. Hi, I'm Alex Exum, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, The Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm, call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
Are you intrigued by Paranormal Talk Radio? You'll love the new Paranormal Radio app from TalkStream Live. You'll find a great selection of talk shows covering UFOs, ghosts, strange phenomena, and much more. Download the Paranormal Radio app now and start listening to the very best in paranormal talk entertainment, including the network you're listening to right now, the Paranormal Radio app, free in Google Play and the iOS App Store.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to the Fringe FM, and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on the Fringe FM.
Howdy, this is Catalina, and you're listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop.
And welcome back. You are listening to Lighting the Void with your host, Joseph Roop.
I like how Deacon says Joseph so properly. Can't ever tell if he's real or being sarcastic. But that is Michael Deacon from End of Days. You can check that show out on Sunday nights right here on the Fringe FM. And we've got a ton of good shows. Like we've got a new show Saturday night, too. If you hadn't heard it yet, the Midnight Hour, Stephen Cambion. The guy can get pretty intense, but I like the show. It's kind of cool because he plays music in the background the whole time, and you wouldn't think that would work, but he's figured out a way to make it work. It's a pretty cool show. But right now, you're listening to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM, and we're here with Rob Shelsky, author and writer. And before the break, Rob, you were talking about, we were getting into the Mandela effect, and you had mentioned missing islands and even missing people. Now, that's some pretty freaky stuff. Has that actually happened, like where you've had islands come up missing?
Oh, yes. A lot of them. And I mean, for real, I'm not talking about Atlantis, which may have been one of them. Who knows? If history is altering, then of course that could be part of the problem, couldn't it? So we've had all sorts of islands disappear throughout history. There's a long list of them, and one is recently, it's just a few years ago, Sandy Island in the South Pacific. Now here's an island that was more vertical than horizontal. It was, if you look at a map, it's like a long north to south island, not very wide. It was unmapped for centuries, and it had been seen by captains of different ships and their crews of different countries. It was there, apparently. And then suddenly it ceased to be. Now, the odd part is, and in my book about it, I talk about it and have a picture of it, Google Earth shows Sandy Island on a satellite map, but it's pixelated out, blacked out. But it's in the exact shape of the island as it was drawn on other maps. But they don't normally pixelate stuff unless someone requests it, like a government, if it's an important military installation or something like that. But here, and when we're talking about a Google map, I'm talking about a satellite map, an actual photo, not a drawing. So this thing was on that, and I have a copy of it to prove it. So, and this island's gone. So if anyone lived on that island, they're gone too. And what's more, we don't remember them. But it's not the only island that has gone through this kind of transformation. Throughout history, in the Caribbean, in the South Pacific, in the South Atlantic, this has gone on and on and on. And we simply can't figure out why this is so. But it does seem to be so. And again, where do the people go? If there was a landmass 1/5 the size of Australia, just to the west of Australia, what happened to the people on it? Now, a lot of people vaguely remembering an island being there, but they can't remember its name. Well, there must have been a few million people on that island if it was 1/5 the size of Australia. What's happened to them? We don't remember them. You might have had a cousin there, a brother, a sister, a friend, a relative of some sort. They're not only gone, just vanished, but from our memories as well, as if they never were. To me, that's worse than death, because at least if someone dies that we love, we remember them. We have those memories of them, but if they just vanish from our memory, from our timeline, it's as if they never were at all. And the horrible part is we don't even remember that they don't exist anymore.
So that's a freaky thought. All right, so what you're saying right now is like I could have somebody missing from my life that used to matter to me, but I couldn't tell you who it is now because I don't know who they are. I've totally forgot. That could happen.
You even forgot they existed, so you don't even remember that. Yeah, it's there was a case, pretty famous one, Lorena Garcia, and she's not alone. There's others. She woke up one morning in her apartment and noticed minor things were different. Some of her little tchotchkes weren't what she thought they were. Her bedspread was not the one she remembered. So she just thought maybe she was having some kind of little mental schism or something. So she went to work, and she went to the department where she always worked. They said, "You don't work here. We don't know you, other than the fact that we know you work in the building, and you work on the other side in another department." So she went over there, and they all seemed to know her, but she didn't know them. What's more, she didn't even know the work. So by this point, she was getting upset. She went to her sister, and they were talking, and she mentioned to her sister that her sister had a shoulder surgery, and there was a scar. Her sister said, "No, I don't." And she pulled down her blouse to show that her shoulder was completely bare of a scar. She remembered having broken up with a boyfriend 6 months before. And then from that point forward, she had a new boyfriend, and he had a son, and they were basically, going pretty strongly together. Now she suddenly finds out that she's still with her old boyfriend. There is no new boyfriend, and his son never existed, at all. So she went to a doctor, and he said, "Well, other than these strange fixations you have, you seem perfectly normal mentally." So she went to a psychiatrist, and he said the same thing. So then she hired a private detective, and he could not track down her latest boyfriend and his son. Again, it was as if they never existed. So in desperation, she posted a plea on the internet that if anyone had any information at all about what was going on, to please contact her. She thinks she woke up in a parallel timeline, ours, but it was not her home line.
Whoa.
Wow. Well, documented as well. And again, this is not the only one. If we're just one, you'd have to kind of, you could kind of discount it. But when it's hundreds, even thousands of people who are claiming this sort of thing over and over, and even groups of them. There's another case where 3 girls in Utah went to a nearby town. They were staying at their college dorms. They had to be in by 10 o'clock, I think it was. They were traveling a highway back when all of a sudden the highway became strange. It went from being tarmac to being concrete, and they thought they must have taken a wrong turn because it seemed to dead end at the base of a cliff. So they backed up, and tried another section of the highway. Still couldn't find out where they were going. Saw a tavern, pulled over into it, said, "Let me ask directions," the passenger. So she called to a guy that was standing by the entrance to the tavern. He turned around, and then she suddenly started screaming at the driver, "Get out of here, get out of here, get out of here now." So they took off racing down the road, and a teardrop-shaped car followed them for a little bit, then disappeared, and then all of a sudden the road seemed normal again, went back to tarmac. And the driver said, "What's the matter? Why did we have to get out of there?" She said, "Because they weren't human." And by the way, that highway has a history of being haunted.
Okay.
Long before this occurred.
This is getting a little bit too spooky for me, man. And what I'm trying to, I'm just thinking about stuff that, I guess I'm a control freak. You know what I mean, Rob? Like, I like to feel like I'm in control of what's going on, at least not everything, but my life. But some of the stuff you're saying, if it's real and it sounds like it's definitely happening to people, there's just too many cases. We don't really know much about what's going on in our reality. as much as we think we do. That's just the cold hard facts.
That is a cold hard fact, and it may be that we are existing in a simulation. That is one of the possible explanations, and someone's tinkering with it. Whenever you, I used to be a computer programmer, and whenever you fixed something in a big program, quite often it led to things further in the program that glitched, and you weren't aware of that because that wasn't the section you had been working on. So if someone's doing that with a simulation, excuse me again, it could be that that's the sort of thing that's happening. But the number of people who disappear is incredible. In the United States, between 800,000 to 1 million people vanish every year. Now, if you deduct people who are kidnapped, people who are murdered, people who just want to run away, people who want to start a new life with a new identity, if you deduct all of that from it, you still come up with around 50,000 people a year who are just vanishing forever from the United States alone. Australia has a population of around 25 million or slightly less. They're losing 30,000 people a year. In Alaska alone, with a total population of 736,000 in 2014, they had a number of disappearances over several years. There was no less than 60,700 people in Alaska alone. This was about 1/7 of the total population at the time, and they now refer to it as the Alaska Triangle for that reason.
Yeah, and we did a show on the Bermuda Triangle with John Quasar, and the more I look into this stuff, I'm starting to think, well, let me ask you, because you've done a lot more research than me, let's be honest, right? Do you think that this stuff relates to our consciousness at all? Like, we think consciousness is just, hey, I'm aware, that's my consciousness, right? And then when I go to sleep, I lose part of it. I think there's so much more to it, and I think it blends in our reality a lot more than we think it does. That's just my opinion.
Okay, I need you to clarify that for me just a little bit. When you're awake and conscious,
so here's
you're
the
affecting
thing.
Reality. When you're asleep, you're not? Or?
Yeah, right. So when you talked about missing people or missing timelines or the Mandela effect, what it made me think of was, and the only thing I could relate it to, was people like Robert Monroe and others that have had out-of-body experiences, and they talk about even once they got really proficient at what they were doing, they talked about living in other people's timelines, other bodies even, where they totally forgot about this life. So, and if you keep reading into these books, they also talk about how it all blends together. And then I talk to the physicist like Thomas Campbell, or he says, all of this is just a simulation of consciousness and that's it. Well, if truly all this stuff is happening, the Mandela effect, missing people, missing islands, all these different just warp hole triangles, then to me, and I'm just trying to rationalize what it could be. That's all. Maybe that consciousness is not what we think it is. Maybe it's not separate from reality is what I'm saying. Like, it's not separate from physical reality. It is physical reality. And just really weird things are going on. And it kind of ties in that way.
Well, in that case, one would have to assume that if it's a major shift in our timeline, like islands disappearing or people suddenly waking up in a different timeline, that maybe it's a mass consensus that what the majority of people believe is real becomes real. Now, quantum physicists say that observation does change the outcome of the experiment, that a particle behaves one way when it's not observed and it behaves another way when it is observed.
Right.
Then you have to go one step further. A lot of quantum physicists think that particles don't actually exist at all, that they are a probability wave, that they can be pretty much anywhere in the universe, but it's probable that they're going to be at certain points more than others. Now, based on this theory, and again, I'm not making this up, quantum physicists have basically stated this before me, that means that you could most probably be where you are right now, but there's a small quantum chance, extremely small but not impossible, that you might also suddenly pop out of existence here and somewhere else, like in space, other side of the universe, or maybe another timeline. And if this is so, it really shakes one's belief in reality, because, and another fact is that we're made up of atoms, which are made up of subatomic particles. Now, an atom is 0.9999999% vacuum. For all practical purposes, it's nothing. Now, we're made up of all these atoms. We're made up of nothing. So if you ever want to, or if you ever wondered if one ghost is solid to another ghost? The answer apparently is yes, because we're all ghosts living in a ghost world. The only thing that prevents you from walking through things is the
relativity of it, right?
Well, it's the atomic force. It's the repelling force of atoms, so that when you go to try to pass through them, they repel, and you repel as well. But if that were to stop, yeah, you could pass through anything. But apparently, our universe could be nothing more than that nothingness and probability waves. That what happens is based on when someone... So in other words, if a tree fell in the woods and you weren't there to observe it, did the tree fall in the woods? Probably not.
Yeah, there's no observer. Yeah.
Right, but the thing is, in our universe, apparently, if anything can observe it, that's the least ways conscious. It does happen. So it doesn't matter if a human observes it or an animal observes it or whatever. So, but yeah, it's quite possible that we're nothing but probability waves, and we think it's real. But what we're really seeing is every time I look to the left, the universe is collapsing to my left to show me what is most probably going to be there, but not always. Now, if this is happening with people on the macro scale, like, not subatomic, but our world, then they could shift timelines. And by the way, there's one scientist that even thinks dreaming might be creating other universes.
Right. Yeah, see, that's what I was trying to get at, too. But, it could explain a lot of paranormal activity, too. Poltergeist activity, things like shadow people, or when people see things that move out of the corner of their eye. They might be catching something just slipping through as they're turning their eyes, and every now and then, I just think every now and then we get a glimpse of in-between worlds sometimes.
I think we do. It's funny you should mention the shadow people. I've started researching that recently because I've had a few experiences with those too. Really? You never know. You never quite know if it's just a trick of the eye, and I have double-checked on things quite often. It is, but sometimes I would swear it wasn't. But again, how do you find proof for that? So you have to start looking for videos and things like that of shadow people, and then of course you have to be so careful that they're not hoax, because the internet is rife with that sort of thing these days. It used to be easier to research on the internet. Now you really have to know what you're doing.
Yeah, right. Yeah, there's no doubt about that. But what I can say is I don't negate people's personal experience as, I know it's not scientific evidence, sure. But if enough people say, let's just take UFOs, for example, or if enough people say they saw a specific type of UFO and it gets into the thousands, stuff like that, then I have to say, okay, there's something to it. Same thing with missing time. But there's been so many theories about missing time and missing people, and it does make you wonder if you really look like what you're talking about, quantum entanglement, quantum physics, observation, the double slit experiment, if we just don't slip in and out of reality sometimes. I mean, everybody that talks about missing time, they try to explain it, and the best I've ever heard it was someone say, well, it's kind of like being a fish pulled out of water. You don't really know what's going on. You've just been sucked out of the reality you're used to, and then you get put back. And that's all they can say.
My brother had missing time when he was 16. I didn't learn about it till he was in his 40s. He never wanted to talk about it. He and a friend were out in the desert camping. They were teenagers at the time. His friend's father dropped them off there, and they stayed overnight. Near midnight, they saw an object streak across the sky. It looked like it landed not far from their campsite, so they decided to get up and go look for it. And my brother completely forgot about it. The next morning, he and his friend John woke up. They struck camp. John's father came from, took them home, and that was the end of it. They never talked about it, nothing, not for a couple of decades. Then one day it just came to my brother what had happened. He remembered it, and he called up John and said, do you remember this incident? And John goes, yeah. And he goes, well, do you remember us walking out to look for it? And John goes, yeah. And he goes, what happened after that? And neither could remember. Now, my brother doesn't claim to be abducted, but he does claim missing time. And because he is my brother, I believe him.
Yeah, right. Nobody could tell you any different. I mean, the rest of us could say, well, he could be, you're his brother. You know him. He don't do stuff like that. He doesn't make stuff up. Yeah, see, I know what you're talking about.
And also, my brother wasn't really particularly into UFOs or anything like that, not at 16. But this so impacted him and John that John sold his house in San Diego and he moved his wife and children to Las Vegas to be closer to my brother so they could continue trying to explore what the heck happened and what was going on. And then that included them going out to observe Area 51 at a distance and that sort of thing. So, and he did get some videos of strange objects flying over, and he showed them to me. I have no doubt that UFOs exist. What they are and where they come from is the big question. But do they exist? Yes, UFOs exist. Sure. The evidence is in. I was a MUFON field inspector for a couple of years, and trust me, they exist.
Yeah, they do. But see, it's so, the UFO community, it gets so crazy sometimes that I just step back and just say, to take a break from it. Not on the show, but mentally. And you have to really find people, I think, that you can depend on. And find people that are integral in the field, like a buddy of mine, Tim Doyle, John Greenwald from the Black Vault, guys that are really trying to move this thing forward and trying to be taken seriously. Although you can't discount people's stories, and that's something I won't discount. Because like you said, if you know that person like nobody else, like say your brother, then you know that they're not lying to you. They're telling you a story. And if thousands of people are saying it, then it's got to be real. I just wonder why, Rob, and this is my big question. If it's so real, if it's been there so much, how come we just don't have the pudding, right? We don't have that big pudding that everybody wants to see. And I think my theory is because it has something to do with consciousness. I think consciousness and physics are directly related, and possibly, this is just possibly, that these aliens and whatever they are, they figured this stuff out. You know, they can figure out how to be seen and not seen, and every now and then we catch glimpses of them, but that's just me.
Oh, I think they definitely have cloaking capability. The evidence seems to be pretty strong for that. I mean, a commercial pilot over Paris, France, saw a huge UFO in front of him, and it was about a half a mile in diameter, and then the thing just actually faded from view. He said it didn't go into a cloud. It literally faded out of existence, cloaking device. We've had the same thing over in America here and other places as well. People report it, and then all of a sudden it's gone. We've had so many UFO, and the thing with UFOs is it isn't just that we spot them and see them. We've had interactions with them. We have had damage to property on a large scale around the world with UFO encounters. We have had injuries. We have people who are ill. We've had people die, and the number of people who have died in UFO encounters is far higher than you think it would be. I mean, it isn't just a few.
Really?
And if it's worldwide too. Whether it's the Dyatlov Pass and those orange orbs they saw, or whether it's the Soviet divers in, I think it was Lake Baikal in the Soviet Union at the time, who were forced to the surface by some kind of weird thing under the water, including some people dressed in silvery swimsuits that forced them to the surface. Now, these people had to be put into a decompression chamber, and they only had one that was big enough for 2 people, and they had to cram in 3 or 4 people into it. So 2 of them died, and one of them was crippled for life. This is not minor stuff. These aren't jokes. These aren't just, oh, yeah, you thought you saw it, but it was just a weather balloon. These are people who have been injured and die from this stuff. And it's a lot of these cases. Michael Valentich in Australia, a young guy flying a plane, reports it, has an ongoing transcript that is available on the Internet that you can see of him with the control tower talking about what he's seeing and what he's doing. And then, boom, he's gone, disappeared. No pieces of the plane, no wreckage, no body was ever found. Now, some people try to say, oh, well, he must have gotten confused. He was a seasoned pilot. The weather was good. And his transcript with the control tower is quite clear as to what he's seeing and what he's feeling and how frightened he is at the end. So, and this goes, I mean, you can go on forever stating these cases. So, do UFOs exist? Absolutely.
Right.
What are, that's the question. They seem to have capabilities we aren't even close to yet. So either they're from another world in an advanced species, or they're from another dimension, or they're from another time. But they seem to be able to do stuff that we have no control over. And yes, they do seem to be able to cloak themselves whenever they want to. And sometimes that cloaking seems to fail.
Right. Yeah. And look, I want to talk to you about this more, but I also want to, bring to people's attention. if you go on his website, robshelsky.blogspot.com, or if you go on Amazon, a lot of the stuff we're talking about, and I'm certain Rob has put more detail in there. A lot of these books are Kindle editions. Even the paperbacks are affordable. You could really stack up on some stuff here. Go check it out and go grab the material, because I know I'm going to. And look, we'll be right back with Rob Shelsky. Also, if you do want to call in, you can. It's 1-800-588-0335. That's the call-in number. But we are getting a new phone system. I'll tell you about that later, possibly tomorrow night. Be right back.
I love magic, and on Lighting the Void, each and every week, you will get to hear shows about magic, mysticism, and many other subjects that stretch your mind and imagination. So when I got my mind on the magic and the magic on my mind, I listened to Lighting the Void on the Fringe FM. It's magic.
May the gods look with favor upon you.
You're wondering what we're going to do to you, aren't you?
This is Elle. I listen to Lighting the Void because it's interactive radio with good content, interesting guests, and a humble host, sharing his journey through the esoteric. Hey, Joe Roop. Thanks for having us along for the ride.
Thank you so much for a delightful evening.
Well, I got a lot of ground to cover.
Hey, Fringe FM listeners, did you know that when you're on the road with limited data or no Wi-Fi available, you can still listen to every minute of the Fringe FM by calling 701-719-3971. No smartphone, app, or internet needed. Saves your data plan and no extra cost if you have unlimited minutes. Call 701-719-3971. That's 701-719-3971. Listen to the Fringe FM on any phone, anytime, anywhere.
Somewhere between abnormal and paranormal, there's a show called Into the Paranormal. I'm Jeremy Scott. Hear me live Saturdays at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern on the Fringe FM.
Introducing Shadow Light Tarot from Waking Canvas. The Fringe FM's new contributing artist, Eric Tesey. This hand-illustrated black and white self-published deck serves as a reinvention of the tarot, never before witnessed. Each of the several suits of this 88-card deck lineup form an infinite panoramic scene. Even the included visual companion guidebook is entirely hand-illustrated, cover to cover, with beautiful visuals and esoteric symbols and artwork. The newly released deck comes in a custom magnetic box with its own travel pouch. The Shadow Light Tarot Premium Deck and its travel-sized mini deck Wonder Light Tarot are both available now from WakingCanvas.com. If you use the code word FRINGE, that's F-R-I-N-G-E at checkout, you'll receive an extra 10% off your entire order. To discover more, including a free reading and time lapses of all the illustrated artwork, make your way over to WakingCanvas.com today. That's WakingCanvas.com. We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves stripped bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand three truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25 years shelf life. Normally $137
now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in one business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
We've heard your feedback loud and clear. You called it out, and now we're answering. All new live programming, 5 nights a week. Always remember, the Fringe FM is for you, the listener, and we appreciate your feedback. Keep the feedback coming. You can email us at talkback@thefringe.fm. Call the station at 501-777-5631, or send us a message on Facebook at The Fringe FM.
Ahoy there. Gigi here from Shift Happens. Do you like to boogie down to topics such as ufology, the occult, and the mysteries behind our reality? Well, I invite you to join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, that's 10 p.m. Eastern, as we like to punch that curiosity button and tickle that fancy. We tickle that fancy, but yeah, I don't know if that's the right analogy, but there's certainly a lot of tickling going on over here at Shift Happens.
You're listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
Occult Arcana is a balanced and objective guide to those subjects considered a part of the nature of light and darkness. Addressed in this text is a compilation of material that will provide new perspectives and awaken latent abilities that we all possess. The content herein shall provide magical sustenance for adept and novice alike, and will help strengthen the cornerstone of mystic understanding and alchemical transmutation. If you are interested in this modern grimoire, you can find detailed information and ways to order by visiting www.thesecretteachings.info. Although esoteric and occult studies remain vast, they are rooted within a universal philosophy that is difficult, if not impossible by finite terms, to explain in words. Language places restriction and erects barriers to understandings. By this it is to be understood that there are some things man should consider far too sacred to profane with definition. For these concepts and the manner by which we live our lives, we shall take a note from the Greek philosopher Pythagoras. Quote, "Silence is better than unmeaning words." End quote. To get your autographed copy of Occult Arcana today, simply visit www.thesecretteachings.info or email The Secret Teachings at rdgable@yahoo.com.
Listening to Lighting the Void Radio.
All right, Rob Shelsky is our guest tonight. And you guys, sometimes I wonder, like during the breaks, you miss out on some really good conversations. So Rob's telling me that no one has ever said, "Beam me up, Scotty," on any Star Trek episode. Now, I don't claim to be a Trekkie, but I did like the show. And that is even hard for me to believe. I watched it even when I didn't like it as a kid. In the 80s, my dad watched it, and I watched it with him. I could have swore that somebody said that at least 10 times. And you're saying no one's ever said, "Beam me up, Scotty," on that show? Ever?
Not the original series, no. Not Spock, not Kirk, not anybody, not Nurse Chapel even. I mean, nobody said it ever. And in Looney Tunes, I was brought up on the Bugs Bunny cartoons, Looney Tunes. Do you know how tunes is spelled? Looney Tunes?
Right. It's spelled different.
It's spelled T-U-N-E-S now. But I remember it being T-O-O-N-S. Looney Tunes. Tunes are music, songs. Some of these cartoons had music in them, but a lot of them didn't. It doesn't even make sense to have Looney Tunes with a T-U-N-E-S. I remember this being Looney Tunes, T-O-O-N-S, and they were cartoons, so Looney Tunes. It made a lot more sense to me than... and all the old Tarzan movies from the 30s and 40s, the famous line, "Me Tarzan, you Jane."
Yeah.
Never said it. Not in any of the movies ever. Nope, never was said. And yet everyone around the planet says, "Oh, me Tarzan, you Jane,"
Luke, I am your father. Apparently, he never said that either. He said, "No, Luke, I am your father," or something, right?
Yes. No, I am your father. Yeah, no, I am your father. And even the man who played Darth Vader, in 2 different interviews, when he quoted those lines, he quoted as Luke, I am your father. So even he's getting it wrong, which is really strange. Interview with a vampire, it's now interview with the vampire. I remember it as being interview with a vampire, but now it's the. It doesn't make sense.
Well, why does it change this? How come it's only changing little bitty things? Yeah, I'm not saying that these aren't just insanely crazy, and it trips me out, really does. But why is it just the little details? I wonder. I mean, why isn't it changing something big?
Yeah, it isn't just little details. Remember, we're talking about disappearing islands and land masses, around the planet. We're also talking about, for instance, well, here's another example, a little more important. If you go into the CIA archives online, the ones that have been open to the public, you'll sometimes see 2 different or even 3 different documents giving the history of a certain event that they were investigating. And these documents will be in direct contradiction with each other. They give 2 alternate versions of reality. And these you can see for yourself. Go online to the CIA, look them up. It's just, and then also like Freddie Mercury and Queen, we are the champions of the world, my friends.
Come on.
That's supposed to, that isn't apparently how it worked out. Because I remember it as being, we are the champions of the world. And however, although the phrase does appear in the song, where it seems to need it the most at the end, that line's not there anymore. And I remember the song ending with that line.
We are the
and a lot of other
we are the champions. Yeah, we are the champions of the world. He does say it in the end, doesn't he? That's the last verse, isn't it?
Nope.
You're kidding me.
Not the last line is a lot of people remembering it. We are the champions, my friends, or something to that effect, and apparently not. Febreze, I buy Febreze myself. I would swear it was spelled F-E-B-R-E-E-Z-E. Febreze, like a fresh breeze.
Yeah.
It's now spelled Febreze, F-E-B-R-E-Z-E, Febreze. But they pronounce it Febreze. When did that happen?
You got all this stuff in your book, or is this just stuff you're pulling on top of it?
No, a lot of this is in the book, but there's plenty more, so don't worry.
Oh, man. Oh, look, I'm grabbing that. I can't figure out which one I want to get first, to be honest with you. I'd probably get that one first. The Shattered Reality, the Mandela Effect, which I thought it was like named after mandalas. You know, they have mandalas, but it was named after Nelson Mandela, right? Or am I wrong about that too?
No, it started in 2013. Fiona Broom was the one who coined the term. She had a blog site, and it got to be a big deal over how Nelson Mandela of South Africa died. Some remembered him dying in the 80s or 90s while still in prison under apartheid, and others remembered him dying after he was president and had retired. I actually remember both versions. I distinctly remember back in the 80s or 90s hearing he died in prison, but then I was quite aware that he became president. So how do you account for that? I mean, I really don't know myself. Another good example is Sally Field. You know the famous line she said at the Oscars, "You like me, you really like me"?
Right.
She never said it.
What?
What she said was, "You like me now."
No, she said, "You like me, you really do like me." Right? Isn't that what she said?
No, she didn't say that, but I would swear, and everyone says, "You like me." They even make fun of it, like on SNL and stuff. "Oh, you like me, you really like me."
Yeah.
She never said that. She said, "You like me now." I even actually rewatched that particular scene. I called it up and looked at it, and it doesn't say it anymore, if it ever did. You know,
Man, this is entirely trippy. Okay, so before I get just too cross-eyed from being tripped out on this, You also wrote about the aliens, the darker side of the moon. They're watching us, deadly UFOs, and the disappeared. You don't take the approach that what's happening with the ETs is benevolence and love and all this stuff. You think that there's a definite threat here. Am I correct in saying that?
Absolutely. My advice is if you see a UFO and it appears to be coming towards you, run like hell. get away from it, because nothing good ever seems to come of encounters with UFOs. The best one can say is you see them at a distance safely. The worst is that people get abducted, that there's damage to their property, that they suffer horrible injuries, or that they are abducted and horrible things are done to them. And worse, a lot of people are disappearing permanently and never coming back. And what's happening to them, no one knows. But even David Paulides in his books, The Missing, 411, talks about how many people have disappeared from national and state parks around the country every single year, and under very bizarre circumstances. So something is going on, and whatever it is, it doesn't seem to be good. Because whether... in one of my presentations in Baltimore, a woman at the end of it said, well, you're being unfair. They're probably so advanced they see us like insects, like ants, and that's why they behave this way towards us sometimes. I said, number one, if they're that so-called advanced, whatever happened to as we progress, we get more and more moral and more compassion. Things that we used to let go, we don't anymore. It used to be we treated animals horribly. A lot of people still do, but a lot of people are becoming vegans and vegetarians, and we pass laws protecting animals, and we pass laws on human rights. Whoever these beings are, whatever they are, they seem to have no concept of human rights. They abduct you against your will, they subject you to torture, and then they wipe your memory of it so that you don't know that it happened to you, so that makes it okay. No, it doesn't.
Yeah, communion was the one that freaked everybody out, right? When Whitley Strieber came out and told his story, and it was, that was not an easy story for him to tell, by the way. He got mocked by people. It was, I couldn't imagine what he was going through, but it just came to pass that, like, after he came out, there was a lot of other people saying the same stuff. I even know people that couldn't finish the book. They said, I just couldn't finish the book because it freaked me out so much. And yet, now what you hear about a lot is, the intergalactic aliens that are here to save us, and the galactic federations and all this stuff. And I'm like, well, I don't see too many. I see a lot of speculation about these things, but not more evidence is on the meaner side of things, I guess, is for lack of a better word,
Well, I don't think there may be more than one species of extraterrestrial, and there seems to be some evidence for that, since so many people have witnessed them and reported abductions, have reported more than one type of species. I had a friend, now passed away up in New York State, who was an astronomer, quite a brilliant man, and he had a security clearance for the Black Hawk helicopter. This was no stupid person or nut. And he related to me his experiences in abduction. And I remember they stopped in his early 20s or late 20s, and I said, you almost sound sad, like you didn't want it to end. And I said, did it make you feel unique that you were being abducted? And he goes, yes, Rob, that's exactly how I felt. I was special. And when it stopped, I wasn't special anymore. He said, even though it was horrible. And I said, well, you saw grays come into your room. And he said, yes. And I said, and you talked about these hooded figures, short ones in blue. And he said, yes. And I said, can you give me any other information, any other sensory input? Was there a smell or a sound? So he says, oh, definite smell from the blue ones. They smelled like rotting wet cardboard. Well, that's pretty amazing that someone would remember that.
Yeah,
so
it is.
I don't think he was lying. I think he was telling me the truth. And by the way, he's the one who sent me the book Communion. So he was already talking about these abduction periods before Communion ever came out. A lot of people were. Communion just sort of rode the wave, but it wasn't the first time that it was brought to the public attention. In fact, it dates back to the early 60s, so when the first abduction book came out. But yeah, it's definitely something's going on, and whatever it is, it's not good for us. It's not good for cattle and animals. They're being mutilated. People are being killed, and I just don't see that UFOs are necessarily a good thing. They are either immoral or they are amoral.
Yeah, and earlier you brought up the orange orbs. Now, this is something I've been a pretty big skeptic of, not UFOs, but people's reports and, like you said, YouTube videos, and it's just so hard, right, to see what's real and what's not. But these orange orbs, I've even seen them like amber or kind of a ugly yellowish color, even daytime shots of them. Tim has shown me some of them kind of coming in and out of reality and moving really fast. I wonder what those things are. Have you heard about those? What's your opinion on that?
Yes, and they're very similar in appearance to the Brown Mountain Lights here in North Carolina, which I investigated and which I even took pictures of. And I don't know what they are. The Brown Mountain Lights do not seem to be under intelligent control. They simply rise above the Brown Mountain Ridge and go straight up, even in a really high wind, which when I was observing them, they were. In fact, they're so common that there's even a state highway with a state sign saying, Brown Mountain Lights turnout viewpoint. So even the states put up a sign, and there's always people there. And you don't see them all the time, but you see them quite often. And they date back several centuries at least. So what they are, I don't know. But now the orange orbs do seem to be under more intelligent control, and they're seen quite often off the North Carolina coast around Wilmington, just a few miles off the beach there. In fact, they're very common. Again, they behave as if they're under intelligent control, but no one seems to know what they are. We only know what these things aren't. They're not helicopters, balloons, planes, drones, any of that sort of thing. So whatever they are seems to be unknown. But we've had so much in the way of observation by professionals, policemen, military experts, generals even, presidents of the United States, Jimmy Carter, Ronald Reagan. So are all these people nuts, emotionally ill?
I was going to ask you about that. Mr. Trump, it's kind of funny how he said that I don't really believe in him, but I trust my military. It does make you wonder just what the presidents actually know. Are they briefed on this stuff? Do they know about it? Or is there some type of shadow government that's constantly running in the background that they get little small reports about? It's hard to say for me.
Well, Senator Inouye, now passed away, of Hawaii, said that there is a shadow government, and it even has its own military and its own Air Force. In other words, it's part of our military and Air Force, but they have control of it and they use it. There's two theories about the presidents. One is that most of them don't know it, and it's on a need-to-know only basis. However, there are some, like Jimmy Carter said he was going to divulge it all after he became president, because he saw one while still governor of Georgia, and after he became president, nothing more came of it. Ronald Reagan, on the other hand, did make several speeches in which he, including one at the UN, which he alluded to the idea of aliens and attacking the world. And it said that under Nixon, that Jackie Gleason, a very famous comedian and actor of the 50s and 60s and 70s, was shown dead alien bodies on a special trip with Nixon. Later on, and you can get a video clip of it if you want to, they interview him and say, what did you really see dead alien bodies? And his response was, I don't want to talk about that. It wasn't no, of course not. It wasn't yes, it was no, I don't want to talk about that. That's all he said. That's all he's ever said on the subject.
Why do you think that is? Do you think they think it's for national security reasons? I'm sure that's what they're telling them. It's got to be for military and security reasons. It's
for security reasons, but it's also the consequences. It isn't just military people who have died involved with the UFOs, but a lot of investigators have died. I mean, an incredible number of researchers and investigators have died dealing with this whole UFO, and it starts way back with the Secretary of Defense under President Truman, James Forrestal. He was the first, and he died under very strange circumstances. He was accused of having an emotional breakdown after the fact. But he apparently did not, because his people who visited him thought he was perfectly lucid. And it just seems to go on from there. The number of people who have died. Dorothy Kilgallen, she was famous. She was a journalist. She went over to the United Kingdom in 1954 to 1955. She sent 2 special communications home to the United States. The first, she said that there was a hush-hush meeting of various high-ranking military officers from around the world. And the second one, and this is a quote, I believe on the basis of our inquiry thus far that saucers were staffed by small men, probably under 4 feet tall. It's frightening, but there's no denying the flying saucers come from another planet. That was quoted by a member of the British government and in the interior cabinet of the British government at that. But it just goes on and on. Astronomers have died under strange circumstances. Journalists, microbiologists, and quite a few of them. There's even been what they called swarms of deaths, like in the late 80s, early 90s, and again in the early 2000s, where 12 to 13 people a year were dying under very strange, and a lot of them supposedly were committing suicide under the most appallingly weird circumstances. As just one example, one man was found. He had electrocuted himself, apparently, and he had taped himself up to do it, and had even electrocuted himself via his tongue. I mean, another one decided to get in a car, tie a rope to a tree, got in the car and drove off, and so he could hang himself that way. Even Philip K. Dick, the famous author of Blade Runner, A Man in a High Castle, all that, even he died under rather bizarre circumstances. Pilots died that way. It just goes, again, the list is almost endless.
Well, what do you ever think about that as, I ain't trying to scare you, but you're an author yourself. I ask authors this all the time, even, mostly off the air. Are they ever afraid that anything like this is going to happen to them? Now, you're really digging in here. I mean, you ever wonder if some of that stuff might happen to you, or have you had any weird things happen to you like that could be considered?
Yeah, actually I have. I always felt there was safety in numbers with all of us nowadays, all over the internet and everywhere else, writing books and stuff about it. I thought, well, I'm just one of several 100,000 around the world, so why would they go after me? But, a very famous writer, Sidney Sheldon, created a list for his final book, and in it he lists no less than 25 persons who met untimely deaths in a very short period of time, and it's referred to now as Sidney Sheldon's list for that reason. Very famous author, did Bloodline and a whole bunch of other books. Not science fiction. These are like murder mysteries, that sort of thing. But he got interested in UFOs towards the end of his life, and so he came up with this list while he was doing his research. But there was quite a rash of deaths in the early 2000s. I mean, William Milton Cooper, now he wrote science fiction and other books as well, and one of them was Behold a Pale Horse, very famous. And he died under extremely strange circumstances. An ambulance came to his house before he died, and police showed up as well.
Yeah, I've kind of looked at that case quite a bit, actually, under the Black Vault, and one of the weird things about Bill Cooper's death was all of the investigations it seemed like every sector of government was investigating this guy. But if you look at his health too, Josh Reeves brought this up and brought it to my attention as well. He was already dying to begin with. So I wonder, because he had some bad health issues, and so I wonder if it wasn't, the whole suicide by cop thing too.
That's possible. And that is why I would never rely on just one example to prove a point. Again, any individual example might be subject to misinterpretation, just sheer mistakes. But if you can come up with hundreds of them and they all follow a pattern, then you start to wonder if there isn't something going on. I mean, in 2001, Dean Stonier died. He was a victim of a sudden and fatal heart attack, although he wasn't old and he had no history of that at all. Vladimir Pashishnik died in 2001. He supposedly died of a massive stroke. Again, no history of it. Robert Schwartz died in 2001. He was viciously stabbed to death in Leesburg, Virginia. And as a funny side note, it was supposedly 3 Satanists who the police arrested and charged with the crime. I don't know whatever came of that. I couldn't find any more information. Here's another one in my native Australia, Geelong, down in this very southern tip of Australia. He died of nitrogen asphyxiation. Apparently he locked himself in an airlock he himself had designed. It was a very strange sort of death. Victor I can hardly pronounce this, Korshinov, died in 2002, assaulted and bludgeoned to death in Moscow. Tanya Holtzmeyer, murdered by a fellow microbiologist. David Wynne Williams died in a highway collision under mysterious circumstances in Cambridge, United Kingdom. It goes on and on and on, one after another after another. And this was all in the early 2000s. Then it defies statistics that many people, researchers, would die in that short a time under such bizarre circumstances.
And what do you think triggered it again? I mean, did you bring that up already? Did I miss it? What do you think? What event in the early 2000s triggered it? Or was it just the fact that all these researchers were getting somewhere in their investigations, you think?
It could be. That could be a reason, most definitely. Whenever anyone gets too close to the truth, maybe their time is up. There was a case of one man who was at a convention. He died. His face turned purple. He keeled over shortly after taking a sip from a soda. They never did an autopsy, and they never came to a conclusion. The cause of death unknown. Wouldn't you do an autopsy? But they didn't.
Some of the unclassified stuff is pretty freaky as well. The fact that they had a heart attack gun in the 50s that they could hit you with, and it would just barely pierce your skin and cause you to have a heart attack. You know, they would find out if your blood pressure was too high or whatever it was, hit you with it, and it would kill you. And nobody knew it. Nobody knew what it was, or it would always look like natural causes. And this was in the 50s. The 50s. I mean, what do they have now that they can do to people?
Well, also, why were some of these deaths so weird? Ian Langford, in 2002, they found his body shoved under a chair in a partial state of undress. How? And no conclusion as to how he died. And there was another, Paul Vigay, who was a leading expert in crop circles. He was so familiar with it that he was used as a consultant in the movie Signs with Mel Gibson. And then they found his body floating in the sea near Portsmouth, England. No one knows how he died, how he got there, or what happened. There was no witnesses to it. No one knows anything. Now, are all these people committing suicide under totally bizarre circumstances, or has something happened to them? And is the circumstances of their death meant to be a warning, a message?
Well, it sounds to me like it's probably a little bit of both. And I can't believe that we're already halfway through this broadcast. A fantastic conversation. And you bring up a lot of interesting points. Look, guys, we'll be right back with Rob Shelsky. I'll get to your questions, too. Stay with us.
This is Vance Nesbitt. Take the time to expand your mind by listening to Lighting the Void with Joe Roop right here on the Fringe FM.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
Paranormal News. I'm Brad Bernards. Fast radio bursts, or FRBs, are one of astronomy's hottest topics and biggest mysteries. These brief bursts of radio waves from outside the Milky Way typically pop off for only a fraction of a second, then disappear forever. Only 2 FRBs have ever been caught repeating, according to Discover Magazine's online blog, Debrief. Kendrick Smith of the Perimeter Institute for Theoretical Physics tries to explain what these FRBs are.
And the 21st century mysterious surprise is the fast radio burst, which is some sort of very energetic event that happens at a great distance that we observe here on Earth as a brief pulse of radio waves coming from very far away.
So what about this mystery of FRBs? Here's computational scientist Dustin Lang.
Fast radio bursts are a really exciting mystery. We have more ideas of what they could be than we have actual detected fast radio bursts.
The current prevailing theory is that FRBs are outbursts that occur on magnetars. Tracking an FRB back to its home galaxy is challenging. As more and better radio instruments come online, astronomers are hopeful they'll be able to unravel the mystery. It's the dream of every Jedi wannabe, especially those who had plastic flashlight versions. Take hope, young Skywalkers, that day may be coming sooner than you think. Mysterious Universe reports that physicists have discovered a new and easy way to make hybrid light particles that behave more like matter. But will it fit into a light sword handle? You're going to need some rubidium splits, which will enable flocate polaritons to give you states of strongly correlated photons. Physicists at the University of Chicago published details of their research this week in the journal Nature with a video that helps non-physicists wrap their heads around the idea. Study co-author Logan Clark explained in a press release how others had first created polaritons as a byproduct, but his team was the first to make them intentionally. Unfortunately, he doesn't see these as a solid form of light for lightsabers, but rather a kind of fluid. Light super soakers. Find all of tonight's stories at parabnormalradio.com. I'm Brad Bernards, Parabnormal News.
Right, me old Chinas. I know it's an ad break, but before you lot shoot off and make yourself a cup of Rosie Lee or whatever else it is you're going to sling down your Gregory Peck, you need to listen to me babble. If, like me, you found your way to Light in the Void via a downloadable podcast, you might want to take a butcher's at the Fringe FM Wind and Kite. You won't Adam and Eve how many other shows there are or what they rabbit on about. Ancient history, conspiracy, the consciousness, the esoteric, the occult, metaphysics, parapolitical, ufology, technology and spirituality, to name but a few. They got featured hosts like Ryan Gable, Jeremy Scott, Alex Exum, Tim Doyle, Cortana and Gigi, Susanna Ross, the Reverend John Polk, Michael Deacon and J.D. Lewis. You might find yourself listening to the thoughts and theories of the author of the fish you just finished reading. Or you could pick up the dog and bone, call in and tell everyone your own beliefs or experiences. So do me a favour, before you put on the Ansel or crack open a bottle of vino or roll a joint, go to the Fringe FM and see what you're missing.
Hi, this is Aaron Hunter, host of Real Paranormal Activity, the podcast, and you're listening to The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
Lighting the Void. The call-in number is 1-800-588-0335. If you would like to text, you can text in at 501-777-5631.
Rob Shelsky is our guest tonight, and man, we have gone down so many rabbit holes in just an hour and a half. Can you imagine what is in this gentleman's books? And during the break, I already picked up the Mandela book, the Kindle version. I wonder about the moon, because I know you wrote about the moon as well. Now, I am fascinated with the beauty of the moon. I always have been, Rob, but the mysteries of the moon, it is the most mysterious little thing in our sky, and there's been so many theories about this. I've even talked to John Lear, who's told me there's bases and species and aliens on the moon. And, you know, I got to be honest with you, Rob, when he told me those things, I had a lot of questions. However, Crow 777 did take some shots of some lunar waves and anomalies that were flying over the moon that we just couldn't explain. And so I do wonder just how much this theory, how much credit it has to it of aliens actually on our moon that we're not aware of. I wonder what your opinion is on that.
I think there's reasonable evidence that they've been there in the past, and they may be there now. The moon is just too strange. In fact, one scientist said it's easier to prove the moon doesn't exist than that it does. I mean, it is just full of oddities. For one thing, it's not dense enough. For its size, it should be denser. It should have the same density as the equivalent mass from Earth because supposedly it came from Earth. But it doesn't. It's too low in density, which led another scientist to say it raises the frightening possibility that the moon may be hollow. How do we account for the lack of density on the moon? The thing isn't more, you go to the moon, it's quite solid, but overall, when we compute the mass of the moon, its density is too low. So if it is made of solid rock like on Earth, and yet its density is too low, something must be missing on the moon, either large caverns or it could be hollow. And there's a lot of other oddities that help prove that. Not prove it, I shouldn't say prove, that lend one to think that it's a possibility. A number of NASA scientists have speculated that the moon might be hollow. Who knows? It might actually be made of green cheese. But I mean, when you get into it, there's the moon's orbit's too circular. For instance, its convenient diameter for solar eclipses is another oddity. When something strikes the moon, it rings like a bell for hours and hours. Lunar landers that were dropped back onto the surface of the moon had what was known as a resonance. Now, this doesn't happen on Earth. Yes, the Earth resonates like from an earthquake and things like that. But on the moon, it goes on and on for hours as if, one scientist put it, the moon were hollow. Also, the vibrations went as deep as 25 miles, according to the lunar seismographs we have there, but they didn't go through the core. Now, the fact that they didn't seem to go through the core either means the core is made of some material that won't transmit seismic activity, which we don't know of any material that won't do that, or there is no core, it's hollow. So, and that's another example. Craters on the moon. Small craters are deep. Large craters are shallow. Now, here on Earth, when we have a large impact, the crater's deeper than if we have a small impact. On the moon, it's just the reverse. Some scientists, two Soviet scientists, who came up with the idea of the hollow moon theory, and again, it was came up with by scientists, think that that's because there's an inner shell, and when the large meteors strike and penetrate, they hit that shell and bounce back, and that's what causes the shallow crater, whereas the small meteors never make it that far into the moon, so they leave the normal deep crater. There's a lot of helium-3 on the moon that we can't account for. There's Neptunium-237, which has a half-life of about 2.5 million years. There's none of it left on Earth. We only get it from spent fuel reactions and nuclear power plants, that sort of thing. And yet there is Neptunium-237 on the moon. Now, with a half-life of 2.5 million years, there shouldn't be any left on the moon any more than there is on Earth. So where did it come from? We have moonquakes that we can't account for. We have transient lunar phenomena. NASA commissioned a report that dates back 500 years on transient lunar phenomena, otherwise known as TLP. And they have seen over the last 500 years streaks, flashes, beacons, tracks, mists, fogs, strange lights, volcanoes. There are no volcanoes on the moon. And some of these sightings have gone on for months and been seen by several astronomers at the same time and recorded, though. So what are these things? The moon has no atmosphere. They see lightning on the moon. There's no atmosphere on the moon. Where would you get lightning from?
The flashes of light thing has been happening for, since the 40s and 50s? They've been trying to figure out what that is? That they still don't know what that is.
Actually, it's been on for 500 years, but we became more aware of it ourselves more recently in history. But again, that transient lunar phenomena report for NASA, commissioned by NASA, says that has dated back almost they only did 500 years because that was sort of the start of the telescope, even the small ones like Galileo had. So they tried to limit it to that time frame when there was actual means to observe the moon with some degree of accuracy. But they have been seeing this stuff all along for centuries, literally centuries. And it's the far side of the moon, for instance, is thicker than the near side. It just goes on and on. The moon is a very, very odd place, and no one can seem to explain it. The top three layers of rock on the moon, the least dense one is on the surface. The third layer down, according to what our astronauts found, is denser than the top two layers. It's in reverse order. On Earth, the densest material is at the center of the Earth, like iron, nickel core, and then the lighter materials are up in the mantle. But on the Moon, it's reversed, as if it had been pumped out in reversed order from the center of the Moon. So otherwise, it's hard to come up with.
I've got people in the Fringe FM chat saying, Rob is shaking up my reality so much, I'm starting to feel wobbly.
Well, I've had other people say the same thing. There goes that nut job Rob again.
Well, I mean, no, look, you're just talking about stuff that's facts. I mean, a lot of facts that I don't know about, and I'm very impressed by your knowledge on all this stuff. But I do wonder, Rob, if I asked you what your opinion on what was really going on with the Moon, would you be willing to tell me?
Yes, I think there has been some kind of, I think someone's been on the Moon before us, whether it was us in a prior civilization that we've now forgotten with racial amnesia. Something big happened on Earth about 12,000 years ago, about 10,000 BCE actually, and maybe we've forgotten, but we were there before, or someone else has been there. And there are enough oddities on the Moon to make me suspect someone might still be there. And there are some questions that you have to ask yourself. Why was the last flight to the Moon in 1972, I think it was, Apollo 17? We haven't been back in over 40 years since. Were we warned off the Moon? Why didn't we go back? Our technology has been improving by leaps and bounds every decade. It should be easier and easier to get to the Moon, but we haven't been back for almost half a century. Why not?
That's so true. That's so true. I think there's the whole idea that it's a spaceship and that it's been put here. I don't know about all that, but what I do know is that I wonder sometimes what the planet, or just how the planet would function if we took the Moon out of the equation. Would the planet be able to function at all? It does seem like, because, Neil deGrasse Tyson and other folks have talked about the perfection of life and how things are so mathematically perfect here that it just happened to be able to spawn life. Well, there's no way I look at that as a coincidence. But the Moon is a part of what's going on this Earth, all the systems, the ecosystems and stuff. So if we took it out of the equation, would we still have life? I mean, it would be like Mars almost. It wouldn't be, it wouldn't be the same. So to me, I think maybe someone did put it there. That's just so wild, it's hard for me to even say that.
It's funny you should mention Mars, because the only other moon in the solar system that might be hollow is Phobos. Its density is too low for its size. And scientists are saying, well, that could be because it's a loose conglomeration of rocks that sort of glued themselves loosely together and then got covered with dust. Well, that doesn't seem to be the case, because it keeps its shape. It's not shifting like a cloud of debris. And also, every time we've tried to send something anywhere near Phobos, including the Soviets, way back, something went mysteriously wrong with them. In fact, if you look at the Soviet probes, there were two of them, they actually caught a photo of something long and cylinder just before they went off the air. And the other probe went off the air too, and they have no idea why. To this day, they don't know why. Those two probes failed. But things in general going to Mars have a very high failure rate, much higher than, say, to Venus or elsewhere. And with Phobos, most of all. And by the way, with regard to the Moon, there is one crater that keeps popping up over and over again. It's Aristarchus crater. And the blue mists, blue flashes, blue glows have been seen in that for like several hundred years. Even Apollo 11 reported a glow in the crater. And they don't know what causes it. But it's so common that astronomers have nicknamed that crater the Blue Gem. Again, that's not me saying that. That's actual astronomers giving it that nickname, the Blue Gem. Nobody seems to know why. Some say, oh, it's because it's near the horizon, near the demarcation between day and night, so the sun's at a low angle and striking it, making it the interior glow, but none of the other craters around it are glowing, and they should be. And also, quite often, it's not at the edge when they've taken photos of it, and it should be. So, it shouldn't have that glow, but it does. And this, again, the oddities add up. I don't know how the Moon was formed. the impact theory doesn't seem to account for all the problems. And when they try to add to the impact theory of another planet colliding with Earth to make the moon, we come up with even more oddities. If two planets smash together and threw pieces of themselves into space that became the moon, you should have rock from both sources on the moon.
Right.
We don't. Isotopic signature of the moon seems to be the same as the mantle of the Earth. So where's the planet Theia isotopes? Why is there none of that on the moon? Where'd it go? It was supposed to be the size of Mars.
All very good points. All very good points. I think you're spot on about that. I want to go back. I want to keep talking about the moon, but also want to go back real quick. That you mentioned all the missing people, or the people that ended up dying mysteriously. I was thinking about this, and I wonder what your opinion on this is. The To the Stars Academy, I'm sure you're aware of it, the push to, well, I'm sure you're aware of the whole thing. I don't have to bring that up, right? You know, Tom DeLonge, To the Stars, all of the big contractors and government wigs behind him. You know, Tom DeLonge never looked to me like a guy that would be nervous to go up in front of the public, but I cannot help, and it still bothers me to this day, that when they announced To the Stars, and he had all those gentlemen sitting behind him, all those brainiacs, that his face was beat red. I mean, he was even pulling on his collar. And I wonder if maybe he didn't stumble upon something that he wasn't supposed to. And, you know, instead of taking this guy out, they actually used him. You know what I'm saying? To give us some type of narrative that they want to give us. What do you think about that?
Well, I think disinformation is rife with the government. They don't seem to be able to tell something straight, no matter how or what it's about, whether it's about a new helicopter, bomber, or just what's going on in general. They just don't ever seem to give us anything but doublespeak and double talk. It started with the Vietnam War, I think, that when they started using different phrases that were less offensive to people, or maybe less shocking to people, like how they numbered deaths. You know, deaths become casualties rather than people killed. You say, well, there were a number of casualties, which doesn't sound nearly as bad as saying a bunch of people were killed. And I think the government's doing this for a long time with this double talk and double speak. And yes, I think they are using people as a front. And I think they're doing it in collusion with some of these people, and also with behind the people's back, so to speak. They're just sort of using them to get what they want from them, and they give them enough rope to hang themselves, so to speak. And I think that's been the case with a number of UFO researchers. I think you have to, if you're going to research anything, you've got to stick to the facts as much as possible. In my books, I give evidence, and I try to give it from several sources. And again, I leave it to the reader to try to decide, because, like you said, the proof of the pudding is in the eating. Until you can actually grab a UFO for yourself and take a ride in it, you just can't be sure. Although there's a lot of people who've seen them and swear that they have. So, well,
I might ruffle some feathers when I say this, okay? But when it comes to the UFO subject, the most frustrating thing about it is there's a lot of circumstantial evidence, even in the Bob Lazar case, right? Even in those, a lot. Things just seem to add up to make the story true. But when it comes to something simple that should be easy to get, and I'll give you an example. When Bob Lazar and John Lear and those gentlemen went out to look up at the UFOs and supposedly got caught by the guards or whatever, there's a lot of film there of them guys just chatting back and forth, but no film of them actually pulling the video camera up and pointing at the UFOs they're talking about. And that's just one case. There's things at the Assetti Ranch that are a lot circumstantial when it comes to lights and stuff, that I think if somebody would just go over to the mountain and see what's really going on over there, and it may not be that easy, but these are just examples of stuff that
there was a mountain that people, and my brother was one of them, and I think his friend John was involved. They would camp out there and they would video, and he did show me videos, and there were strange lights that shot straight up, hovered, made bizarre motions, and it went down again, almost as if someone was test flying something very odd. And I've looked at the video, and I got to tell you, these aren't airplanes or helicopters. For one thing, they're dead silent. I mean, there was sound to these videos. And for another thing, they weren't cloaked, obviously, because you could see them in their bright lights. And they then later seized the mountain. The government seized control of that mountain.
Okay, so there's no way to get out there then, right? That's what I'm...
Oh, no. And all these people are going to march out there I would advise them strongly not to do it. I have driven out to Area 51. I've gone as far as I can, and trust me, the Jeeps and the SUVs do show up, and they sit there and they watch you, and if you pass one certain sign, they swarm down on you. My advice is I wouldn't go near the place at all, except that I was extremely interested and had to see it for myself. But and it's so desolate out there. Something could happen to you, and no one would ever know. You got to use your head with this stuff a little bit.
Well, what they figure is if it's that many people that they're not going to stop them, and I know that it started out as a joke or whatever, and I don't want to get involved with the drama of what's right and wrong or the morality behind it. The fact is you're going to find out that the government takes their national security very seriously, regardless
Extremely
of
serious.
How bad you want to know.
Yeah, I know. Are you dying to know, in other words? Because that's what it might come to. My advice is don't do it. Don't do it. There's other ways to go. Get into research. Get into MUFON. Although, to be quite honest with you, I dropped out of MUFON because I didn't like the direction that the control of it was heading in. And that was just me, but also my state director felt the same way here, the state director of MUFON. She also quit for the same reason. It just... Bigelow was getting control of all the evidence, and I don't want to say a cabal, but a group of people at the top, including one who apparently is a medium. And when you start mixing mediums with the UFOs, that's going beyond my purview for it. I want to stick to the facts. So
exactly, and back to my point is I believe there's UFOs, right? I just don't think. I'm probably going to upset some people. I just don't think it's as prevalent and it's just out there in droves like everybody's, kind of like paranormal activity. You hear all these stories and it's everywhere. And I think that real poltergeist activity and hauntings, and I've talked to several people on the show and behind the scenes, real, true, freaky, scary stuff is not as frequent as you think, but it's definitely there. It's definitely real. And I think we blow a lot of things out of proportion. And in the UFO field, just to get some hardcore evidence would be nice. And we have that. We do have that when it comes to in my opinion, those amber ball. What did you call them? Amber orbs? The orange orbs?
The orange orbs, yeah. That's one good example. There are others, though. I mean, when a military plane intercepts a UFO and it disappears off the screen, seems to merge with the UFO, and then no sign of it's ever found again from the 1950s to now over the Great Lakes. And no parts of the plane have ever washed ashore, no bodies are ever found. They just were gone forever. Now, you can say, well, yeah, UFOs may or may not exist. Well, really? Because what happened to these two men if it wasn't a UFO?
Sure.
What did they run into? What happened to them? Why can't we find them? Why can't we find any evidence for them? Why do we have military pilots communicating not only here but in France and in Belgium as well, and ground radar tracking and even video from military jets showing these things? There's something. The U.S. Navy just released the fact that they had quite a scare with one of the aircraft carriers, and they were constantly, almost daily, it says, Now, this is the U.S. Navy saying this.
Right.
So,
doesn't that bother you, though, a little bit that they say now we're going to start taking this stuff seriously? We're going to actually take it seriously when our pilots report this stuff to us, even though they've been doing it for years, we're going to take it seriously now. That tells me stuff's been in our skies for a long time that you haven't even acknowledged. And that's our military.
They may have always been here. Our history seems to indicate that they could well have been here for millennia, at least centuries. I mean, we have evidence for sure that, Winston Churchill thought they were real. He even issued a memo to his cabinet where he wanted them to find out what the United States knew about it. France has issued reports on it saying it's real. Belgium has declared that it's real. They don't know what it is, but they know it's real. They've sent jets to intercept. We have sent jets to intercept. The Brazilians have. Now, you don't spend millions of dollars scrambling jets for things that aren't existing, that don't exist. And yet this is what England has had it. They had their superstorm of UFOs, huge ones out over the channel. 2 pilots of 2 different commercial planes and their passengers saw it and witnessed it. So are these things real? In my opinion, absolutely. Again, I don't know what or who they are,
sure.
But they exist. That's a given. It's like, well, why don't we have one? Well, I don't know. Why don't I have a nuclear reactor? They exist.
Yeah.
And I think they exist. I mean, I see these things around the countryside that they say are nuclear power plants. Never been in one, so, but they exist. I think it's more like denial. I mean, the majority of Americans believe UFOs exist. Over 1 million people claim to have been abducted in America alone. These are huge numbers. If they don't exist, this is one heck of a psychological event happening in our society.
I think most of us are far beyond. I would hope that most of us are far beyond the fact that they exist or not. Although I will say where I live, nobody even acknowledges it. It's so weird, Rob. I'm like, hey, did you see where the government talked about it, admitted it, etc.? Like, no, I didn't. They still look at me like I'm crazy where I live, but I live out in a small town area. But to me, there's no doubt they exist. My point is when it comes to getting solid evidence, I think what happens is we've got tons of it, but it gets thrown in the wash with all of the other stuff that's not real, cons, or people thinking everything's a UFO. That's my point.
Right. Number one, 95% of UFO sightings can be explained or at least discounted. For instance, there was a woman that I did an investigation on here near where I live, and she had seen what looked like a silver orb appearing and disappearing in a cloud. And I went out to the site. I took photographs. One, I found there was a small civilian landing strip right next to where she was talking about, and just behind where she had seen it over a forest, top of a forest, was the Raleigh-Durham Airport. And so I had to discount her. She may have seen it. It may have been real, but I had to discount it when I wrote it up because I said it could have been the blunt nose of the front of a jet just poking through the clouds as it was making a turn to go in a different direction. Now, was it? I don't know, but if there's any other explanation that we can come up with, we have to discount it. So MoveOn's really pretty good about discounting this stuff. They, again, 95%, but there's that 5% that cannot be explained. You can say that what everyone sees is an hallucination or something, but it doesn't explain the injuries, property damage, and deaths. Illusions don't do that to you.
You have a very good point, my friend. RobShelsky.blogspot.com. That's the website you need to check out for reference for tonight. The show's moving by fast. We're moving into the last part of the show. If you got questions, you better get them in. I see a few. We'll get to them. Be right back.
This is Sammy. Join us in the Deep South as we're lighting the void with Joe Roop on the Fringe FM.
Did you know that qualified patients can access medical cannabis in all 50 states? CannaSense is a medical cannabis collective that helps patients in all 50 states gain access to cannabis medication. CannaSense does this with a streamlined process and strict compliance with the Compassionate Use Act of 1996, the Affordable Care Act, and the U.S. Constitution. It is important for each patient to understand the legalities involved, the costs, and the benefits of cannabis medication. Through truth, legalization, and education, the medical benefits of cannabis will supplant recreational perceptions, and the real vision for change will be realized. Let the people and their personal doctors take control of their medical cannabis decisions before the greed of big business takes over. The tipping point for change is today, and CannaSense is ready to lead the charge and enable legal access for all qualified patients to medical cannabis through its proven system. For more information, go to thefringe.fm/care or click the banner on the website today.
Ahoy there. Gigi here from Shift Happens. Do you like to boogie down to topics such as ufology, the occult, and the mysteries behind our reality? Well, I invite you to join us every Friday night at 7 p.m. Pacific, that's 10 p.m. Eastern, as we like to punch that curiosity button and tickle that fancy. We tickle that fancy, but yeah, I don't know if that's the right analogy, but there's certainly a lot of tickling going on over here at Shift Happens.
Hey, is that a new music app?
Yeah, check it out. Surfer Music Discovery. It links to thousands of online stations, but the twist is you see the song names and artists that are now playing live.
That's different. No guessing. Looks like a waterfall of music.
So many formats. Rock, oldies, country, R&B, jazz, and a whole lot more.
How's that spelled?
Surfer. S-U-R-F-R.
Is it expensive?
It's free. No need to sign up or sign in.
Get the Surfer Music app free from Google Play or the App Store.
AncientLifeOil.com. For your CBD needs, just remember, AncientLifeOil.com. What does it do for the body, you ask? I can't say due to the people in the suits that run the industry. Big Pharma is all over CBD because of its well, you know what I mean. Research the benefits of CBD on Google and come back to AncientLifeOil.com and purchase your CBD today. Non-GMO and all organic. You don't want to be using a petroleum product. You want to be using the cleanest CBD product on the market. AncientLifeOil.com. We even have CBD for your pet. Help your pet's discomfort. Help your discomfort. Log on to AncientLifeOil.com. That's AncientLifeOil.com. Newly reduced prices to pass off the savings to the most important person. You. AncientLifeOil.com. And one more thing, we have topicals too. So if you have joint pain and some different issues that are going on in your body, you might want to use a topical. Think about it. AncientLifeOil.com.
Alex Exum.
This is Alex Exum of the Exum Experience in Live Talk, where we discuss current events, society, and culture. My shows are based in actuality, actual existence, contrasted with what was intended, expected, or believed. You can listen to me live Tuesdays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays at 7 p.m. only on KTLK, The Fringe FM.
So, you love talk radio? Then you'll love TalkStreamLive.com. TalkStream Live is always on, 24/7 with the best streaming talk shows. Find your favorite talkers and discover some new ones. It's free, readily available online or on mobile with any smartphone or tablet. Finding your favorite talk shows all in one place has gotten a whole lot easier. Just go to TalkStreamLive.com. Be sure to download the free apps from Google Play or the iTunes App Store.
The Fringe FM isn't just a radio station. We also provide services for all your audio production needs. If you are interested in live radio or pre-recorded podcasts, we're here to help. We even do audio enhancements and voiceovers if needed. If you want to do a podcast or live radio show and even want the option to syndicate on terrestrial radio, from simple audio file enhancement to live production and call screening, we have you covered. We have worked with some of the best professionals in the business in order to provide coaching instruction for content creation, show structure, and more. Contact The Fringe Digital Media for more at info@thefringe.fm. That's info@thefringe.fm. Or call 501-777-5631 for a consultation.
When I'm done running with the wolves after hunting down a half-ton bison, I look forward to a mind-teetering escapade evening on The Fringe FM.
Every Saturday at midnight here on The Fringe FM, you can join me, Stephen Canby, the host of The Midnight Hour Show. On my show, we explore paranormal topics with a skeptical view. We search for evidence. We search for proof. We search for the truth. Because who better than me, my friends, a magician, a man trained in the art of deception and misdirection? Who better than me to investigate for you some of the greatest mysteries on planet Earth? And I hope you will join me every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM at midnight Eastern Standard Time for the Midnight Hour Show, 9 p.m. Pacific. I want you to join me here every Saturday night at midnight for an incredible journey. Consider yourself invited. Brand new episodes of The Midnight Hour Show, available exclusively every Saturday night here on The Fringe FM. Consider yourself invited.
Join us on
You're listening to the Fringe FM, and I'm Michael Deacon reminding you can find my show right here on the Fringe FM every Sunday night at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 12 p.m. Eastern Time, or by going to michaeldeacon.com. The choice is yours.
Welcome back to Lighting the Void. I'm your host, Joe Roop. Tonight, we're here live with Rob Shelsky. I'm hoping all you guys know Rob by now. He's become a familiar face in this community, and I'm glad he's here because we're getting down to it when it comes to research and facts. And I like the fact, Rob, that, a lot of people research one thing, maybe two things, but you have researched several different topics. And I wonder, what are you thinking about writing about next? You got any ideas what you're going to do next?
There's two books I'd like to knock out. One is on the idea of quantum immortality, and the other one is about, I'm getting interested in the shadow people. The more I learn about it, the more I think all of us have seen shadow people at some time in our life, out of the corner of our eyes or something, And I would just like to research it more and find out if it's a real phenomenon or just an optical illusion.
Yeah, well, I got to tell you that there's been one time I know it's not an optical illusion. Everybody's heard that story, but I can email it to you, and you could use that. You know it's real, though. I'll just say when your heart speeds up, right? We see stuff out of the corner of our eye all the time, but when you get so freaked out, your heart speeds up and your hair stands up. To me, something really happened. I
was going to say, when you get goosebumps, yeah, it's definitely an event that is raising the hackles on the back. I never was sure what hackles were. I assume it's some kind of hair, but the hackles on the back of your neck, that's a sign that it's because the human body reacts. And yes, people jump at shadows sometimes, but maybe they should be.
I also wanted to ask you about writing. Now, I mentioned to you this before the broadcast about how I was reading Secret Machines, and I started to fall in love with fiction just a little bit more because I figured out that, and I still could be wrong, I just don't think I am, but I figured out people put their experiences, their beliefs, some of the stuff that maybe they're afraid to talk about on the nonfiction level, and they put that in their fiction books, and also a lot of things come through art and symbolism. And I'm wondering, and you've got several fiction books. Did you do that in any of your books? Any personal experiences or things that you think about, but you didn't really want to investigate or write about just yet?
Oh, absolutely. In fact, my fiction books are a great way to get even with people. People go, "Does that mean your book?" It's like, no. But secretly, I'm shaking my head, yes. But no, seriously though, I do take real people, parts of them, characters, and I'll mix and match them with other people I know. So it might be a guy who's really abrupt and aggressive, and I might turn him into a woman who's abrupt and aggressive, and who has some redeeming social value. But yes, writing is perfect for that sort of thing. It's a chance to say what you think about your own philosophy in life that nonfiction doesn't do so well. Nonfiction is great to write. It's simply a matter of research and organizing and outlining it in the proper manner and then proceeding to fill in the gaps, basically. Fiction is a little tougher. You have to create the plot, you have to create the settings, you have to create the people, and you have to move the plot along. The old saying is, if it doesn't further the plot, cut it from your book.
Yeah. Secret Machines, I told you about that book. I gave it a shot, and I'm not a big Blink-182 fan or anything like that. It was just what everybody was talking about at the time. And I thought, well, you know what? I'll read this guy's book. And I read it, and I thought, oh, wow, he's putting stuff in here that he's afraid to talk about. It's in here. And it was some very intense stuff. And since then, I've kind of fell in love with it. So I like to read nonfiction, especially like sci-fi stuff, but I've always been kind of a nerd.
I love sci-fi. I started reading it when I was about 8 or 9 years old, and I literally went to my local library, went to the sci-fi section, and just took the first book off the shelf and just moved down the line and down to the next line, I just read every book there was. In fact, so many that I can't remember what authors wrote what. I was young, and I was just voracious in my reading and just wanted to read more. I discovered science fiction, and I loved it. So, but yeah, I mean, if you like writing science fiction, it's a great way to get your ideas across. Look at Blade Runner, which was actually by Philip K. Dick, I believe, and
fantastic.
I mean, but it's a telling commentary on human beings and society. And Man in the High Castle is another one. We were talking earlier during the break about Frank Herbert and his Dune series. And I grew up partly in the golden age of science fiction, so I got to read a lot of Isaac Asimov, the Foundation trilogy, and I, Robot, and all these books when they first, well, I don't know if they'd just come out, but they were out. And it was amazing how much you learn. Robert Heinlein, Starship Troopers, all those books. I read them all.
Right. I mean, you're getting to be kind of, in my opinion, a more well-known name in this field. You've been on all of the big radio shows now, which is really cool. And I'm glad this is your first time to talk to us too. You had mentioned to me earlier, and I hope you don't mind me saying, that Deadly UFOs and The Disappeared was one of your big sellers. Why do you think everybody is attracted to that? Do you think it's because there's real evidence to it and we should pay attention to it? Or the fact, I wonder sometimes just how addicted we are to conspiracy and fear?
I don't know, but I'm making money at it. I'm kidding. Everything I wrote in Deadly UFOs and The Disappeared and Invader Moon and the others is strictly fact. It's strictly based on fact. And the fact that I draw negative conclusions from it about the dark side of it isn't the way I started out. I think, well, yes, we are attracted to the dark side. All our sci-fi movies for the last 20 years all of a sudden have gotten very dark and drippy, starting with Blade Runner, but then going right on from there, Alien and all these other movies, always dark, drippy. I call them drippy because it's always raining on them. I mean, in Blade Runner, it was raining all the time in L.A. I don't know how or why, but it was. Ever lived in L.A.? It doesn't rain that much. But, yeah, I think we're attracted to it. But also, I think people want answers. And also, I think people like controversy. When I did my presentation in Baltimore on the topic, my host, the one who invited me to do it, agreed with me completely, but I had several people in the audience who were quite adamant to the contrary. And when I was doing the book signing there, they came up to me and told me so. And I finally just said, well, look, anyone can write a book. If you want to write a book from your perspective, please feel free to do it. But this is my book, and this is the way I chose to write it.
Yeah, I've just got the Mandela Effect book. That'll probably be the second one that I got. But, I've got a son, and I think, yeah, we're definitely drawn to conspiracy and the dark side of things. I mean, look how many people love the horror films, especially Netflix. If you look at the ratings on all those, there's a flick on Netflix, I'm not kidding you, it's like The Exorcist, where people have gotten sick from watching it, had headaches, and yet they still go back and watch it. I think it's called The Perfection or something like that, where people just cannot stop watching this thing. And I do wonder sometimes just how much the human condition affects our outlook on this. And then if you look into things like consciousness and manifestation too, how much are we affecting reality as well? Have you ever looked into that? You ever thought about writing about the consciousness field or manifestation?
Well, actually, the Mandela Effect, I do touch on that, on the fact that if reality is what we make it. Having grown up in a period when sci-fi, oh yes, there was all the monster movies of the 50s, a little before my time, but then along came Star Trek, and science fiction for a long time always had a good ending. It was upbeat. You had a federation. You had them fighting for the cause, that sort of thing. And all the other shows that came out were the same way. The good guys always won in the end. And then suddenly it turned dark, very dark. And again, I trace it back to Blade Runner as like being the first real dark one, although could well not have been, but it's the first really famous one I can think of. And from then we seem to go downhill. And the endings often were what I would call bad because the good guys died. And I think maybe we are. I don't know if it's the genre is manifesting, reflecting our current reality. In the 60s, everyone was very optimistic, progress, outgoing, upbeat. The future was going to be better than today. We were going to have flying cars and super cities, blah, blah, blah. And then now all of a sudden, everything sort of turned dark and drippy is the only way I can describe it. And all the books seem to be about apocalypses. Everything's an apocalypse. Zombie apocalypse, vampire apocalypse. Mortal Engines is a good example. The list of apocalyptic movies just goes on and to the point where you almost want to throw up. It's like, does nothing have a good ending anymore?
Right. Blade Runner 2 was that way, too. I don't want to spoil it or anybody, but that was all about the transhumanism thing. And they're making more movies about that, about how, they're replicating and cloning humans and consciousness, and that's going to take over. And those movies don't end well. They don't end well either.
No, they don't. It's always the AI supersede us. And again, is science fiction... Are we catering to the current mood of people in the public, or is science fiction leading the way and prophesizing dire futures? And there is reason to be concerned. There's no doubt that our technology is growing at an incredible rate. I mean, the sum total of human knowledge from 1955, I think it was, 57, doubled again in the next 15 years, and it has taken half that time each time after that. It's growing. Can't think if it's geometrically or exponentially. It's late here, but it's growing at a fantastic rate. We are reaching a technological singularity, and at that point, all bets are off. So yeah, the future is frightening. The future is frightening on every front. It's frightening what we might do with humans, what we might do with brains, what AI might do, what we might do to ourselves with rockets, what we're doing with quantum computers. Everywhere we look, the world is changing at a more and more rapid rate, and it scares us. And maybe sci-fi is reflecting that fear.
Sure. I promised I'd get to some of the text-ins and questions, so here we go. I got one text in from a 870 area code. That's awful close to me, actually. And they're asking, out of the missing people that you were discussing earlier, how many of those do you think, or what percentage do you think could be natural? Like just people disappeared or natural causes, or perhaps something in the woods got them, things like that.
Right. And yes, there's definitely people, but the statistics that I quoted were based on the idea that all the normal reasons for them disappearing had been accounted for. Again, 800,000 to 1 million people vanish from the United States alone every year. Now multiply this times all the countries of the world. Now, of that 800,000 to 1 million, it's estimated that 50,000 people cannot be accounted for because the other parent took the child, or someone ran away from home, or someone was kidnapped, or someone was murdered and their body was buried somewhere mysteriously. 50,000 people a year. 30,000 a year in Australia. Now multiply this times all the countries around the world. We do not have reliable statistics because a lot of countries don't track it, like in Africa, South America, places like that, some parts of Asia. But the number of people disappearing on a yearly basis is phenomenal. And if you discount all the normal reasons from disappearing, you're still left with hundreds of thousands of people a year just vanishing from the face of the earth.
God, that's so freaky. I'm not worried about, I can't think of any reason why anybody would want to disappear me. I'm not worried about it at all. But when you have kids and family and people that you care about, it's a fact that you can't get over. You can't stop thinking about. When my son is not around me, Rob, I worry. I do. But I don't want to manifest anything either. But I think, like, if this is a real statistic, which it is, you got to worry about this stuff. And I think we need to get to the answers of that. And it makes me wonder why. And I've heard, what's his name? David Pauladines from Missing 411 talk about this, that how come we're so focused on one thing like Sasquatch or UFO when the statistics are showing like this should be the one thing that we all should be trying to figure out more than anything.
The numbers are vast. I mean, you've got 300 million people in the United States. And, I mean, how do you track them? And as long as you're not the one affected until you are affected, people tend to ignore it. And we do estimate that 93 to 95% of these people are explainable. It's the remaining percentage, and out of 1 million people, 50,000 is about the figure annually, that we can't they just vanish from existence. But this has been going on for millennia. The Romans talk about disappeared people. The Greeks talk about disappeared people. We've had groups of people disappear. We have had villages disappear. And it goes throughout history. The Roanoke settlement disappeared. We don't know what happened to them. There's been lots of theories. There's been a few hoaxes about it. But even with DNA testing of the local tribes, there is no trace of any of these people and their bloodlines showing up in any of the local tribes at all. So there was a tribe called Croton, and that was carved into a tree. So they thought maybe they had gone there for safety. But and then there was some hoaxes about there were some Native Americans who were blue-eyed and blonde. All that turned out not to be true. It was just not factual. We don't know what happened to those people. We can't find their bodies. We don't know why they left the village. And by the way, they left it rather orderly. They dismantled a lot of things before they left, but they didn't leave any sign of where they were going or what happened to them. Villagers, an entire village in northern Canada, back in the 30s. The Anjikuni, they disappeared utterly. Village totally empty. Now, the stories about that have grown over time, and so you have to be careful. I went and researched the original facts, and it wasn't hundreds or even thousands of people. It was below 100 at the most. But even so, that was a sizable village. Their dogs were still chained up. Their canoes were still moored. Food was left rotting in the houses, half-cooked or burnt. They just disappeared, and no one knows where, and they've never found them. And this goes on throughout history. People singly and in groups have disappeared. A village in China disappeared not too long ago. I think it was around 2010. They don't know where the people went. Just
when
gone.
You say they disappeared, if you don't mind me asking, I don't know how deep you looked into this, but because I haven't at all, was there any trace of anything left? Fire, burnt ashes, nothing, blood, anything?
Well, and depends on the case you're talking about, but most of these cases that I include in my book, no, there's no discernible evidence that anything happened to them, like in the way of a murder or a slaughter or anything like that. The Anjikuni just simply vanished. There was some talk about their graveyards being dug up and some of the tombstones being stacked as well, but no one knows what happened to them. They just vanished. But again, with the retellings, things get a little more iffy because each author who writes the book likes to embellish, I think, which is not good. But I mean, people disappear right in front of people. There was a guy in England, he was betting that he could outrun or run a certain distance, and his friends all didn't believe him. So they challenged him, and he made a bet on it. So they got in a horse and cart and followed right behind him while he was running cross-country on this road, probably more of a track, and he fell forward, gave a shout, and simply vanished in front of their eyes. Now, the whole cartload of people saw this, and they never did find him. He never appeared again. He just utterly disappeared. And this sort of example is throughout history. There's just an endless supply of these stories.
That's so hard for me to wrap my head around, though, it really is.
Right. I mean, what we do know, fact, these people actually disappeared. Fact, in many cases, people saw them disappear. Fact, they were never seen of again, and no evidence for them was ever found. So, of ever being surfacing anywhere else ever again. There's the Bennington Triangle up in Vermont. People back in the late 40s and early 50s were disappearing from there. A man on a bus with his luggage, an old man. He gets on the bus. They come to a stop. Everyone gets off. His luggage is still there, but he's gone. No stops in between. What happened to him? Just disappeared. A woman hiker was right ahead of another couple. She walked up around a rock. They followed her, assuming she'd come into sight again. She disappeared. Nothing. Nothing of her was ever found. None of her equipment, none of her hiking gear, nothing. This goes on and on ad infinitum. So it may seem to you that, this doesn't affect me, but every town and every city has disappeared. Every single one.
Oh my God. This is really, this is really freaking me out, Rob. But, I'm just telling you how I feel. I'm taking it seriously. I haven't looked too deep into this. I don't like scaring myself too much, but I think it's pretty stupid of me to do that, because if these statistics are what you say they are, and I got to believe them, we all should be paying attention to this, and we all should be trying to get to the bottom of it. I mean, people are just disappearing.
Yeah,
that can't be good.
Like David, you pronounced it Politis?
Yeah, I probably said it wrong.
I've heard Politis, too. I have no idea how to correctly pronounce his name, and I'm sorry for that. But, they disappear. And a lot of these disappearances seem to be connected with UFOs. I said Michael Valentich of Australia. I meant to say Frederick. I apologize for that. But I mean, quite often there are UFO sightings in, around, even the Dyatlov, the famous Dyatlov Pass incident, had the orange orbs sighting several days ahead and shortly afterwards. So quite often it seems that these are connected with UFOs in some way, shape, or form. Now, if you find the remains of the people and you can say, okay, accident, plane blew up, whatever. But when you can't find anything ever more, forever, then you have to wonder what happened to them.
Now, again, I know that you're a guy that likes to speak about all the facts and statistics, and God bless you for it, man, really. But I am curious to know about your opinions on things. For instance, when I look at your book titles, Deadly UFOs and The Disappeared, The Darker Side of the Moon, They Are Watching Us, and For the Moon is Hollow and Aliens Rule the Sky. Is it your opinion that we're being ruled over by some type of ET beings that have probably just been ruling over us since time began? I'm wondering about that, because I hear that from people, the whole Zachariah Stitchin thing. There's a lot of people that bring that stuff up.
Well, even if you ignore that, I mean, throughout history there are depictions and paintings of these things, especially Renaissance paintings. They were very religious, and when they did religious paintings, anything they saw in the sky was a sign of God, so they'd paint it right into the painting. And you can go online and look these up yourself, and the actual original 14th, 15th, 16th century paintings show these UFOs in the sky, and they look like UFOs. But yes, I think they've always been here. For all I know, they could be native to Earth. A lot of these UFOs are USOs. They're underwater submerged objects or whatever. And so what we see in the sky may also be in the oceans. Do they have bases down there? Have they always been there? Are they another race of beings on Earth that are more advanced than we are? The Earth has an incredibly long history. We refer to it as deep time. And we do seem to have racial amnesia. We don't seem to know what happened around 12,000 years ago. But something catastrophic happened on the Earth, and it resulted in the end of the entire worldwide megalithic civilization that existed at the time. And so people are trying to account for that. So, yes, I think they've always been here. And do they exercise influence over us? Yes. Are they controlling us? Are they among us? I'm not sure, and I hate to hazard a guess on that. But they certainly seem to have been here an awfully long time. So I would suggest there might be at least a symbiotic relationship with them going on.
Well, you know me. I'm always going to try to get people's opinions, even though I did the same thing with Walter Bosley. He's kind of like you. He likes to talk about the facts, and he doesn't like to, really put too much opinion out there. But I know there's more than me that just wonder about it since you're writing about these things. And I want to touch on more about your writings, too. We've only got just a few minutes left in the program. And by the way, I did mispronounce his name. Someone corrected me via text. It's pronounced Politis, just like you said. So it must be my southern vernacular that ends up getting all that grammar wrong. Shame on me. All right. We'll be right back with Rob Shelsky. Don't go anywhere.
want to know the truth? Are UFOs real? Are aliens visiting Earth? Are governments around the world hiding the biggest secret in history? We're UFO Seekers, official partner of The Fringe FM, and we're on a hunt for the truth. Join us as we investigate locations like Area 51 by subscribing on YouTube at youtube.com/UFO Seekers.
I'm Ryan Gable, and I want to remind you to keep your radio, phone, tablet, or computer tuned to The Fringe FM, and visit the website thefringe.fm to listen to the entire lineup of shows. You can also catch my broadcast, The Secret Teachings, Monday through Friday, beginning at 12 a.m. midnight U.S. Pacific Time, right here on The Fringe FM.
Okay, here we go. AncientLifeOil.com. AncientLifeOil.com. Now this is for CBD. AncientLifeOil.com. Again, for CBD. Where do I get CBD? AncientLifeOil.com. It's pretty good stuff. Organic, non-GMO. We are the Ferrari of CBDs. AncientLifeOil.com. You know, they say when you mention a person's name 3 times when you first meet, that you're going to remember. So I'd say to you, nice to meet you, AncientLifeOil.com. It's AncientLifeOil.com, right? Nice to know that you help people. AncientLifeOil.com. Think about this. Occasional stress, occasional anxiety, occasional inflammation, occasional stiffness, and intruders that get you down. AncientLifeOil.com. Okay, so I'm going to give you a fact for the day. So Ancient Life Oil does not help you with business deals. Hold on a second. If you feel better, it could help you make a better decision. Okay, I'm wrong. Just remember to go to AncientLifeOil.com.
We all have that story to tell in our lives. The winds were howling. The ground shook. You could hear rushing water. And then history repeats itself. When there's no power, refrigeration fails. Stores with their shelves strip bare. ATMs can't operate. Deliveries stop. Then what? These events can last days or weeks. You need a plan. In statements made during recent interviews, FEMA Administrator Brock Long has repeatedly urged all Americans to understand 3 truths. FEMA is broke. The system is broken. If this is the new normal, Americans can't rely on federal cavalry when disaster strikes. Don't get caught out in the elements empty-handed. Prepare with us by going to preparewiththefringe.com and get your 2-week food supply. 92 servings, 8 food varieties with 25-year shelf life. Normally $137, now only $75. Or get a month's supply, normally $247, now only $147, shipped in 1 business day. Just go to preparewiththefringe.com or call 888-440-7931. That's 888-440-7931. Get this great offer and be prepared while it lasts.
Greetings, galactic community. This is Suzanne Ross, host of Sci-Spy Radio, every Wednesday evening from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific. Join me for this brand new show featuring a revolutionary new genre, Sci-Spy, merging science and spirituality to give us answers to the greatest mysteries of creation. Together, scientific discovery and spiritual revelation reveal the truth about who we are, where we came from, why we're here, and where we're going. Tune in to Sci-Spy Radio every Wednesday from 5 to 7 p.m. Pacific and discover the truth for yourself at thefringe.fm.
Every region of the world and most countries can go back in their history and trace their origins, traditions, and religions to a creator god or an angel from the sky, the stars, heaven, or even underground from the underworld. This is the common story of extraterrestrials seeding our planet. My name is Reverend John M. Polk. I am an international metaphysical minister, a Reiki master teacher, and a medium. My book is Yahweh, the biblical God, is an alien. The premise of my book is that there is a real God and that Yahweh is a creator God alien who is indicating he is ready to reveal his alien origins to humanity at this time.
You know, food was different 60 years ago. It was minimally processed, free of pesticides. It was nourishing and healthful for your body. Today, GMOs, pesticides, herbicides, and heavy processing have depleted the nutrition of our food supply which takes a toll on our health and energy. It's harder than ever to get the right nutrition. That's what Life Change Tea is meant to counteract. Our specially blended, powerful herbal formulas can give you more energy without caffeine. It's a mild cleanse, a mild daily detox. A good detox can help revive and bring back the energy of your youth. GetTheTea.com is the website. It'll cleanse you from the inside out with this herbal proprietary formula. Go to GetTheTea.com. There's no fillers, no GMOs. It's organic. Not available in stores. You must go to their website, GetTheTea.com. And their supplements are a great way to maintain your health. Read the testimonials on the website. Go to GetTheTea.com. That's GetTheTea.com.
This has definitely been probably, I'm going to put this in my top 10 conversations that I've had, one of my favorites. I got to tell you, Rob, I've really enjoyed this conversation. Rob Shelsky is our guest tonight, and even though you have freaked me out on a level that I can't quite explain, and I'll probably be thinking about this stuff all weekend, I'm still glad that we had this discussion, and I can't wait to dive into your material. And I noticed in your books that you also, because we brought this up earlier about writing, you have a book that tells people how to get, start writing sci-fi, what to do, kind of like an instruction book, right?
Right, yes, it's a guide to writing science fiction, fantasy, and horror. Yeah. I learned the hard way, and I thought maybe it might be easier for other people to learn from my mistakes. I'm not sure they do.
No, but that's fabulous, yeah, because everybody keeps bugging me to write a book about out-of-body experiences. And in this field, it's like, look, you got so many people that write about this, people that know so much more, that have had so many more experiences than me. I just don't want to be one of those guys that writes a book and gives information that really isn't top quality. For instance, we had Robert Wagner on the other night, Rob, and this guy's been studying lucid dreaming for 30 years plus, and like you, he's written columns for several magazines, and he even expressed his frustration to, some people are just throwing books out there and giving information that it's not really correct. And I just don't want to be one of those folks. So to me, it would be easier to maybe write some sci-fi first or something, Well,
my first bit of advice would be that whatever you have to write, or want to write, it had better be something that you're really intrigued by. I have a lot of people say, oh, yeah, I wouldn't mind writing a science fiction book, or I wouldn't mind collaborating with you. It's like, it's a lot of hard, nasty work, so you better have a real urge to want to write. And nonfiction and fiction are just so opposite each other in so many ways. I'm not sure which I like better. I find nonfiction very easy to write, because it's so logical and straightforward, and I'm kind of that kind of person. But I love fiction, and I love trying to create universes and worlds and people and have plots and plotting. And if I have to give you one piece of advice, outline. Whether it's some people do it by the seat of the pants. Editors don't like it. Trust me. 99% of all editors want you to outline the book and then write it. They don't want you to do it fly by the seat of your pants. It makes for a better book if you outline it, whether fiction or nonfiction.
Can I ask you a question about conspiracy-related things when it comes to writing? There have been a lot of people that talked about, I don't really know how to ask this. If you take, like, Game of Thrones, for example, what's that guy's name? Peter Jackson, right? That guy wrote some books, created his own world, created his own characters. And once he became, it's like nobody really knew the guy. And then when he became famous, now all of a sudden he's influenced by dark, evil, occult sorcerers because there's all these occult symbolism in his movies and stuff. You see what I mean? And to me, it's like, well, the guy wrote a book, HBO hit him up, and they made a movie out of it. I don't see the conspiracy connection. Am I missing something here? So I'm just wondering, like, does this stuff come through like a muse sometimes when you write about it? Do you feel like you're being influenced by anything other than yourself? Ever?
Sometimes, yes. And some very famous writers have felt the same way. There are some that said they literally didn't write the book. They wrote the book, but someone else was doing the writing. They were just writing it out by longhand or typing it, but someone else was dictating. And I've never had something quite that strong. But I certainly have had moments when I felt like I wasn't entirely in control. And I've had it happen with fiction books, too. I'll have a character, and I'll be writing away, and it'll be several pages, and I'll stop and think, wait a minute, this has nothing to do with the book. And I actually have to go back and delete that whole section. So I don't know if I'm just getting carried away with that particular character, but yeah, sometimes you do feel like there's a bit of a guiding hand behind it. Is it someone, something, or you're just tapping into the universal subconscious? I'm not sure. But yeah, I think, call it a muse if you want to, but there is an element of that to it.
So there is some type of influence that you've felt to affect you as you're creating these things. That's interesting. Okay. Whether
not
it's
all
good
the time. Yes,
not
sometimes.
all the time. But whether it's good or bad, I just want to know if it's there, because it's in the conspiracy realm a lot. You know, there's a lot of people that talk about how we're being programmed by occult symbolism. And look, I've seen it myself. I've seen planetary sigils and movies and all kinds of stuff, and just wonder, where did that get mixed up? Did the writer put that in there, or did somebody come along in the Hollywood, field and put that in there? There's just some really weird stuff that goes on there. I've got
sometimes on purpose. Sometimes they're just Easter eggs for you to spot, and sometimes they're just mistaken. Like, for instance, I wrote a book and I talk about the swastika, and of course everyone relates it to Hitler's Germany, but it has a very long, millennium-old history, and it was never considered bad up until the time of Hitler. In fact, it was considered good luck by the Hindus. So, and yet the symbol's there, and yet people love to find conspiracies quite often when there are none. The flat Earth theory is a good example. And that theory has gotten so convoluted to try to prove its point that it's falling under its own weight. Another one is the landing on the moon. I was alive when they landed on the moon. There's no doubt in my mind that we landed on the moon. They were interviewing ham radio operators from around the country who were listening in on transmissions and triangulating them. They found they came from the lunar surface. Plus, it was the Soviet Union that hated our guts and would love to have exposed us, and were monitoring all our transmissions and using their observatories to monitor what we were doing on the moon. Chinese communists were the same way. If they could have told the world that it was all a fake, trust me, they would have. I mean, we were locked into a bitter Cold War at the time with them. So, yeah, we landed on the moon, yet some people absolutely insist that we didn't. Now, I respect their beliefs, but I don't see how they can refute all the evidence that we have. But they try.
I'm with you on that. There's a lot of pressure to a lot of hosts and stuff to stay on the conspiracy side because it grows so fast that they can't come out and say, well, there's some actual real stuff here that isn't as evil as you think it is, right? And as soon as even when they give evidence, they lose listeners. It's like, I brought this up earlier. We're drawn to this for some reason. It's not to say that there aren't crazy things happening, because they definitely are. I mean, my God, did you talk about some tonight? I mean, this is huge for me, some of the stuff you've been talking about tonight. And speaking of which, I've got to get to some of these questions too. My producer, I call her Mother Goose, in the chat room, Dawn, she's saying, does Rob feel, in his opinion, that the Earth will be knocked down again, like back to the ice ages, or maybe back way before we had electricity? In other words, do you think an extinction event is coming? Yeah.
I think that as any civilization grows, it always reaches these particular hurdles. We hit one with the nuclear bomb when it was first invented, and we very easily could have gone nuclear any time in the 60s, 70s, or 80s, and almost did several times. Got amazingly close. And these things are horrible. One Tsar bomb that the Soviet Union came up with was big enough to wipe out all of New York City, Connecticut, Massachusetts, and New Jersey. One bomb. It was called the Tsar bomb. They also came up under Khrushchev with the idea of loading a freighter with nuclear bombs, so much fissionable material that if it was blew up at sea, it would cause a fog or water vapor that would envelop the whole Earth and end all life on Earth. And the only reason Khrushchev didn't go for it was because he was afraid that he wouldn't have direct control and someone might trigger it without his direct authority. So, yes, we do reach these crises in civilization, and I'm sure we're going to reach more. And I think there's a very good chance no civilization lasts forever. It either has to change, adapt, or die. Up till now, all civilizations died. None of them have lasted forever.
A lot of intelligent people have said the same stuff. I've read Robert Schoch's book on the solar inflections and stuff. And I think something's going to happen. I mean, look, if there's nothing we can do about it anyways, let's not worry about it. But things like missing people, if we could figure out what's going on there, that would probably be a lot more helpful.
And UFOs, and with the Mandela effect,
right,
and with the idea of the universe being a simulation. These are all things that challenge us. And maybe we'll find the answers, and maybe we'll just toddle along, and keep on going and meeting each crisis and surmounting it. But the crises seem to be getting bigger, and there is ample evidence to suppose that we might not make it through any one of them, let alone all of them. I hope not. I want to live out my life and die happy.
Me too. I think we all
I don't want to be grubbing in the backyard trying to light a campfire because I'm lousy at it, to cook something that I had to hunt and kill when I don't like killing anything. So, yeah, I'd kind of hope our civilization hangs in together. But it does have its problems. There's no doubt about it.
Yeah.
We live in a hostile universe.
There's no doubt about it.
We do.
The guest I had on last night, he had a fabulous story of a near-death experience where he said he met Jesus, which I don't know about that, but he did make a good point. He said we're either going to give in to our own animal natures and kill each other and just totally focus on technology, or we're going to start to become more service-oriented people and wake up. But it's up to us to make that choice. And service-oriented would be just like taking care of people that can't defend themselves. And in my mind, people that are getting just sucked out of thin air can't defend themselves. To me, that's important to figure out what's going on,
No, and that was my point with the one woman at that presentation when she said, well, maybe they're so advanced they see us like ants. I said, well, then they're not going to take care of us, so the ants have to take care of themselves. If your child is abducted or never comes back, you and I will both be sorry. So what do? How do we protect our children? How do we protect our families? And my advice is if you see a UFO and it seems to be coming your way, run. That's the surest way to do it. And
I wish I could run fast, Rob. I'm not very quick. I'll do it, though. I'll take your advice. Let's see. Okay.
Only if it looks like it's interested in you. If it looks like it's just buzzing around and ignoring you, by all means, get some video, get some photos. The more evidence we have, the better. But if it looks like it might somehow be interested in you, get out of there.
Right. I mean, it's fight or flight. People in school used to think I was tough because I would fight at the drop of a hat, and I wasn't tough at all. It was just I'm too slow to run. Let's see. Eyes Open is asking in the chat room, so people disappear and are never heard of or seen again. What about people who appear out of thin air and are from other places, countries that don't exist on this earth? Have you ever heard of that?
Yes, he's talking, I think he was referring in particular to one particular case that dates back to the 50s. And it was a gentleman from Torred. He supposedly came from a small country just north of Spain, south of France. And I'm not sure if it was Andalusia or what it was, but he called his country Torred. He showed up in Tokyo. He had a passport from Torred. He had a checkbook from a bank there and all sorts of stuff. The Japanese didn't recognize this country, didn't know who the heck he was, put him in a hotel, had guards stationed outside his room, and then the next day he was just gone and all his paperwork was gone too. So, yes, that sort of thing seems to be happening too. Now, is the man from Torred a true story? I researched the heck out of that, and I cannot find any corroborating evidence that it actually is true. I can find no newspaper articles, magazine periodicals, or anything from that period that report this. And so I'm not sure if it's an urban legend or if it's real. I'm not saying it's not real, but I cannot find physical evidence of any sort in the archives to support it.
Gotcha. Okay. Let's see. I'm trying to get to okay. Do you think that there are any esoterical reasonings for all the strange Mandela effects? I think we talked about that, right? That there's a possibility. Esoteric. I wonder what you're meaning by that. Spiritual reasons, perhaps.
Yeah, I was kind of wondering that myself. What did they mean by esoteric? So
consciousness, we kind of covered that. Esoteric, I don't know. I mean, that's you'd have to rephrase that question.
Well, basically, esoteric means something that's understood by a small group of people,
sure,
usually with a specialized knowledge or interest in it. I think the Mandela effect, I'm amazed at how many people have never even heard of it. I go on radio shows, and even the hosts haven't heard of this. Like, wow, how could you not have heard of this?
Really?
But, but if they're talking about it in a spiritual sense, that's an entirely different matter, because if it is in a spiritual sense, then I have to relate it to reality. And if the Mandela effect is any sign, it's a sign that reality, as we think of it, doesn't exist. We are standing on shifting sands, and what we think is solid isn't.
You know, that's really, really interesting that you say that, because, okay, they're saying like magical or occult reasons, things like that. Okay, I get what you're saying now. It's interesting that you say that, because I've had people that have told me that will never come out in public, and I'm not going to say who their names are, that they have seen things like the Mandela effect take place right in front of their eyes. Things that seem to shift in and out of dimensions in front of their eyes. And these are, I'm talking about credible people. You would never think they would say something like that, and they would never will in public. But just the fact
and
that,
again, historically, there's a lot of people who say just that, and in groups, witnesses. So you got to kind of believe it's true. One of the solutions to the Mandela effect, some think it's Satan. They look at it in a religious context, and there are some ministers who are very upset about the Mandela effect because they feel it's rewriting the Bible, changing the meaning of the Bible. There's a number of ministers that really actually feel this way. Now, is Satan responsible? I don't know. I tend to be a more secular person, so I would rule it out. But
I mean, what does Satan care about C-3PO, right? But maybe, like my dad, I know the Bible front to back, and only because my dad used to punish me when I was a kid. He forced me to listen to the King James version on tape when I was a kid, Alexander Scourby version. And I told him, you know who Alexander Scourby is, that famous voice, right?
Right, but I'm amazed you said it was punishment. Most people would think that was an enlightenment of sorts.
Well, as an 8-year-old, it was punishment, because he would make me shut the door, and I'd have to read whole books and read along as he's telling you the story, and he would keep coming there and check on me and make sure I was actually reading. It felt like punishment. But when I told him, I asked my father about that. I said, listen, there's some verses in here. Repeat them to me. And he would repeat them to me. I say, check the book. It doesn't say that. And he would get angry, because he thought I was calling him a liar. And my dad would always get angry when he thought you were calling him a liar. I said, just look in the book. And sure enough, it'd be different. And he would just be like, I don't know what you're getting at, but yeah, it doesn't say that. And then he'd just hang up. So he would get mad about it. But that's when I started realizing, yeah, there's something to it for sure.
Well, again, one of the most famous Mandela effects with regard to the Bible is the lion and the lamb. Yeah. And the lion shall lie down with the lamb. Go on the internet, search images, lion and lamb. You'll come up with hundreds of them. Yet the Bible doesn't say that at all. At least the King James Version doesn't, and not now. It says the wolf and the lamb.
Yep, you're totally right. You're totally right.
And yet almost everyone, me included, because I read the Bible when I was younger, would swear it was the lion and the lamb. I don't remember wolf at all.
Were you raised in the South by any chance?
No, actually I was raised in Australia when I was young, and California, and I went to university in Canada for a while.
And you ended up in North Carolina.
Yeah, no, I just about 12 years ago, came to North Carolina. I like the beauty of the landscape here.
Yeah, it's pretty country out there. And I got to say, I would love to be able to talk to you again in the future whenever a new book comes out or whenever you feel like it. I would love to talk to you again on the show in the future, if you would like to come back on.
Well, I enjoyed the show very much, and yes, of course, I'd be glad to come back. There's still a lot to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you don't mind, please, by all means, just plug every link you want to plug. Let everybody know where they can find your stuff, social media, everything.
Well, I don't like to bury people. Again, and you already mentioned it, they can find all my books at robshelsky.blogspot.com. But really the easiest way is just Google my name on the Internet.
Yeah.
Or just go to Amazon and you'll find all my books, print and Kindle versions there. And you can go to other places too, like Permuted Press, Simon & Schuster, Smashwords. So, again, just Google Shelsky, it comes up.
You mean nobody's came to you and asked you to speak at a conference or anything yet?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I had to actually turn one down. I was supposed to do in Knoxville on August 17th. Family personal matters didn't allow me to get away to do it. I did one in Baltimore last year, and I was also did a presentation at the Library of Congress by invitation, which was really cool because I got to see stuff normal people don't get to see in the back rooms and stuff, like Stradivarius violins and things like that. Wow. But I had to give a speech at the Mary Pickford Theater, and boy, you talk about a tough crowd.
Well, you seem like you do good at with the tough crowd, and thanks again so much for coming on the broadcast. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you, and I can't wait to dive into my first Rob Shelsky book this weekend.
Well, thank you very much, and I really enjoyed the show.
Me too. And you guys, we'll do this again with Rob, and I can't wait to talk to him again. Don't forget the show's produced by the Fringe FM. Don't copy it without written permission. Big shout out to the producers, Pacho, Don, and Dennis. And The Secret Teachings with Ryan Gable is up next. Good night, y'all. See you tomorrow night at the Open Lines.
On this program do not necessarily reflect those of the Fringe FM, KTLK Digital Broadcasting, its sponsors, affiliates, or staff. Listener discretion is advised.